All right, y'all. Welcome to All Politics are Local, America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. Y'all know if it's Friday, y'all know it's time for All Politics are Local. So y'all know, of course, tonight coming up first, we're gonna have our beloved brother, the one and only Mayor Raz J. Baraka of the great city of Newark, and then we got our sister coming on. This is gonna be big, man. We haven't seen Rukia Lumumba.
Yeah,
Uh, she hasn't been on the show in quite a while.
yeah.
So
And
that
we were in D.C. for a minute about a year ago. We miss Rakia, miss a lot.
okay. Yeah, so Rukia is gonna be up at 7. So, we're gonna get into a whole bunch of stuff, particularly about, talking about what's going on in New York with Mayor-elect Mandani. So we're gonna talk to her about that. And I may just hit up my son and get him to come on and talk about the attacks he's under as well. And then coming up at 7:50, we got brother Akil Khalfani, right?
Yeah, he was at the PanAfrican Congress in Togo a minute ago, amongst some other stops that he made on the continent that are important. We're going to let him.
Okay. So then,
All praise is due to Allah for the honorable life, man.
and then coming up at 7:50, we're going. I mean, at 8:30, it's going to be DJ Rhino. So we'll have him coming on. All right, peace, man. What's good, my brother?
What's going on? I'm in Central outside the men's meeting, man. It's been 2 Fridays in a row. We got caught on the same day. You know, brother Josiah is having complications with his,
Oh,
you know, his wife's having a baby. Yeah, and by God's grace, they just delivered it. They just delivered. So, but he's still out. So I've been holding it down for him over here. I got somebody holding me down right now, but I'm outside in the hallway at Central High School as these guys gather here today. You know, I love doing these men's meetings. There's a lot of good brothers here that are interested in doing all kinds of things, you know, for themselves, for their family, for the city. And it's always good to see these guys come together in fellowship and talk about business and economic empowerment, man. It's huge. It's a lot.
how long you been doing that now, man?
Wow, man. I would say at least 10 years.
Wow, wow.
Yeah.
I mean,
For a long time.
yeah,
Yeah.
well,
And a lot of people that, you know, a lot of these guys benefited from that for sure. They got properties, they got city, county contracts. We hear now talking today about the hospital and the business and the medical school going up, which is altogether a $600 million project, and how, you know, we need to be involved in some capacity and trying to find pathways. So we got some people coming to talk to them today about how to get involved in that. So that should be positive, you know, for these brothers. You know, just the tenor of the conversation and the room, the spirit in the room is always good. You know, guys from all walks of life, mostly Black and Latino guys, are in here, you know, trying to figure out how to make a way in this place that has counted us out and put us out. You know what I mean?
right.
So it's good. And the irony is today I was down in East Brunswick at the transition team meeting with you know, the Cheryl and Caldwell camp. They had about 400 people down there talking about a lot of issues, and I think the intent was good and organizing the people was good, but it just showed me that a lot of people around the state of New Jersey really have no idea how to address any of the issues that we're dealing with in our communities or statewide. Just don't know how to do it. Even the so-called experts that they bring on, and that's not like on those two. It's on like, because you got people from all over the state gathering talking about this stuff, and they just don't got it.
Right.
What are some of the common misconceptions? Like, what are some of the things that they're saying?
Well, I don't think it's common. I just think these guys they haven't been around. You know, they don't know. You're trying to find solutions to people and communities you haven't been in, and just the comments that people make are so far away from what actually needs to happen. You know, to a point where people just get up there and restate the problem over and over and over again. So you got people who get up and restate the problem. And don't get me wrong, that wasn't everybody. Some people was giving good feedback and advice at some of those meetings I was going to. But you know, generally people get up and talk about how bad things are. And You know, folks have a tendency to do that. Talk about how terrible things are, how things can't get done, and not about, you know, what we can do to actually make some of this stuff happen and how to change people's lives, you know. And I don't see them having the ability to do that. They just don't have the capacity. Yeah, you know, these problems are very complex and very specific to our community. It's a history that is tied to it, you know, and you can't address the problem without addressing the history.
One thing that you've done that has been different than many other approaches is the men's meeting and the focus on men and training and opportunities. Can you explain more about how important that was to changes that took place in Newark, and what can the state learn from it?
Yeah, I think ultimately, what we try to do is like talk to people who are close to the issues, right? Who are dealing with them every single day. Try to get them involved and get them some immediate relief, some hands-on opportunity to solve some immediate problems, and then figure out how to deal with some long-term solutions to those problems, like how to get with the right people, what needs to be done and said, you know. And you actually learn what the obstacles are because you're talking to people who are experiencing the obstacles. You don't have to figure it out or make it up. Like, you know, these things are happening because the people who you're trying to help are actually right there in front of you. So it's easier to solve some of these issues because people are telling you specifically what the barriers are. And so they just have to be addressed. You don't have to like go to, you know, the rocket science class to figure out what are the things that are holding people back.
You know, man, I wanted to ask you a question, man, because, you know, we were having this discussion, I guess about a month ago, and we were talking with Dawn and, you know, some other sisters. And you remember when you did that walk, that poster behind me, when you walked through the city. I remember you were talking about, you know, you had mentioned to the sisters that, you know, they could bring their sons down and how everybody attacked you and all of that when you made that statement.
Right,
And
right.
I was saying to her that, you know, one of the things we see with these young brothers in our community that are out of control, most of them, when they go home, they going home not to a mother and a father, but to a single mother. And what I said to Dawn is that, you know, we ought to be thinking about what about, you know, putting together some kind of meeting where we invite the mothers and their sons. And Dawn said, wow, you know, we've never tried that, but she thought that was a good idea. And I said
Yeah.
that's something that we should do, because when these young boys get in trouble, you know, man, they don't have no money to leave and go to Cuba. They going right back home. And 9 times out of 10, they going home and sleeping in a bedroom that their mother's paying rent on.
Right.
Right.
Well, the irony is when I was in Liberia, the people were complaining that the mothers are actually bringing their kids to the precinct, dropping their sons off to the precinct. It was like, I can't control them. I can't do nothing with them. And the police are like, we can't do nothing with them either. You know what I mean? So it is. I mean, it's a salient point that needs to be raised. We just don't know how to deal with it. And the point is, like, everybody needs help, and we should be responsible for what's going on. That's really what the statement's about. We all should be responsible for what's happening in our community. Like, not just a few people, but all of us, and not just that mother. Right? All of us should be responsible for those kids that's growing up in our neighborhood, in our community, for their social education, for their political education, right? All of those things should be under our purview. They're part of our community, part of our village, and that's how we should look at it, right? We're so busy being under attack, we don't, you know, we afraid to deal with the real issues that we have. There's some internal stuff that we got to fix, and there's some external stuff. There's some internal stuff that was created by the external stuff. If you fix the external stuff, we still have to deal with what the issues we have internally. So we have to deal with both of those things, you know, at the same time. We can't pretend that one doesn't exist. That's why we need an Office of Violence Prevention and trauma recovery, because people are traumatized. And if you're trying to deal with this stuff alone, you're gonna have a hard time. You know, you got kids on bracelets who on police bracelets or court monitor bracelets who still outside committing crime. The young kids that shot those people on Chancellor Avenue, when they left, they went to a studio to make a rap song.
Wow.
Right. And then the other thing we had after that happened inside the studio, with guys smoking, getting high, doing all this stuff with guns and all kinds of stuff that which is a recipe for all that, and the drill music, right? So obviously folks need some level of direction, right? And like to do that and then go make a rap song is a level of callousness that we just have to be responsible for, unless you just want the police to be responsible for it.
Right.
Right. Which is a bad idea as well, right? So at the end of the day, we at some point are going to have to intervene, and that's what conflict resolution and coordinated intervention is. Us intervening, giving our kids social and political education. That's really what it's about more than anything. That's why Saturday school, Saturday academy is important. Freedom schools, whatever it is that we can create to give our kids structured environments where they're learning social and political history and cultural identity. All of that is important, right? Not just cultural identity by itself, but social and political history, so they know why they're in a situation they're in, what caused it, how to get out of it, what's the direction to go. And it ain't just about their bad behavior. It's about systems that have been in place that directs them towards self-destruction. And once you open people's eyes and they become aware of that, they begin to change their own trajectory, right? You're just helping them a little bit more.
It seems like what you're talking about is always about putting systems in place where people can go in, whether it's the men's meeting, whether it's the Office of Violence Recovery, Trauma and Violence and Trauma Recovery. These are institutional things that you put in place so people can go in and receive what they need on a statewide level, so they can actually recover.
If we wasn't in no situation, we wouldn't have to recover from anything. So, and that's the idea about recovering. We're recovering from this abuse that's been put on us, economic, social, political abuse. We're recovering from that. We recover. That's what recovery is. That's why we in traumatic situations that we have to deal with the trauma. So when you operate from fixing these problems, pretending that these things don't exist, then you already operating from a deficit. You have to talk about the fact that this stuff exists. This trauma is very, very, very real. Like, you can't educate our students without dealing with, identifying, and responding to the trauma that they're experiencing all week and twice on Sunday, right? You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, you have to respond to that. Like, you can't just teach kids mathematics without responding to their trauma. Like, you can't, it's not gonna work, right? Which is the same thing as putting these programs in place. You're not gonna, none of it is gonna be successful unless you treat trauma. Like, violence is gonna exist until the conditions change. And the conditions create trauma, which forces us to have to address trauma and change the conditions at the same time. So you have to have a shovel in one hand or a hammer in one hand to build and a rifle in the other to protect yourself. That's really, you know, it's symbolic, but that's what it is. You know, you got to protect yourself, defend yourself, and build at the same time. You know, which is what people say, flying and playing and building at the same time. That's exactly what we've been doing all of these years, because we haven't had a chance to, these people have been let up.
And I think that the thing that Newark has done, and the thing that you've been putting in place in Newark, is actual institutions that take that into account. In the transition team, is that what we can expect from the state based on the conversations they've been having and based on the way in which they need?
Hopefully, I can tell you this, that they have the desire to do that. And that's more than I can say for a lot of people. I mean, they have the desire and the intent on trying to address some of these things. I'm just, you know, want folks to understand that these things have to be addressed with the people in mind and with them involved. You're not going to be able to address these things from a solely academic standpoint, talking to people who are academic professionals or professors, or talking to people who are in charge of these institutions. You know, one guy got up, thought he was an expert on, you know, on education because he got 5 kids. I mean, like, sit down. You know, in my mind, I'm like, brother, like, this is not, that's not the prerequisite here. And the issues that we're dealing with in our community are so, like, compounded, you know, that it's almost disrespectful to make people believe that they can just come into our community and snap their fingers and these things are gonna go away, right? Our people start believing that you could come and in 2 years change 350 years of trauma in 4. Like, it's just impossible to do, right? You can make huge strides, you can make dents, you lead the way so other you run your leg and pass the baton for other people, but you absolutely positively cannot reverse all of this stuff in 1 generation. They didn't put it on us in 1 generation. And so people don't like to address that. So we need financial literacy. That's true. We do need financial literacy, but I don't give a damn we have all the financial literacy in the world. That's not going to change the wealth gap. It's just not going to do it, right? That's not. So if you're coming at it from that perspective, then you don't understand the extent of this problem. Like, people will get up, oh, we need to stop buying Air Jordans and put our money in the bank. Okay, right? I mean, that might be a good personal financial decision to make, but that ain't changing 250 years of a head start that people had through property ownership, contracts, discrimination, slavery, all this. It's not going to change it through financial literacy. And those folks not going to understand that. Hell, some of us don't understand it. Am I talking bad about financial literacy? No, I think you do need financial literacy, but that ain't the answer, buddy. Right? we gotta do a lot more than that. Starting off with investment in these communities and repair. Like, if you're not operating from that frame of reference, then you can barely hit what you need to hit. And the problem is you got people in these cities that are trying to solve these holistic, huge problems with very little resources, and might get a little bit done or miss the mark in their opportunity. Even folks that have the good intention, you just don't have the resources to do that. Everybody is not New York and LA, right? Everybody don't have billions of dollars to play around with. That's number one. And even when they still need more resources, but at the end of the day, all of these cities around the country are struggling to keep the place afloat financially and take care of their people at the same time with no help. And now you're in a situation where you have a president that's trying to give you less resources than you already have to deal with people whose needs are growing every single day. Food insecurity, housing insecurity, health insecurity, all these things are growing, and they're not feeding or putting money into the solution. It's actually feeding the problem and pulling money away, which is making the situation worse. It's going to make these people's jobs or our jobs in these cities harder to deal with. Hell, he took $800 million away from violence prevention, from stuff that we know works, that, like, the data has shown, not just in one city, but in multiple cities around the country, it's working. So much so that when these people get in office, Trump people are there, they're taking credit. They're going around taking credit. Look, Alina Habba, when she lost her job here, she resigned. She started talking about how crime was down in New Jersey, that she absolutely had nothing to do with. Ain't been here that long to have an impact on it at all, because the things that folks have been doing around the state is working and around the country is working, but they taking money away from it because it's not about it working. It's about the status quo remaining the same.
You mentioned something really great with that in terms of there are things that are actually working. It's quantifiable. I've seen all of these news broadcasts talking about violence prevention. They mention Baltimore, they mention Chicago. They don't mention Newark nearly as much in the national media as they should. What can we do? But what can we do so that to demand money, at least on the federal level? Maybe nothing we can do right now, but what we can do on the state level to make sure that
I don't see the federal level
are funded the way they should.
Yeah, I don't see the federal level acquiescing to any of that. What they are trying to do is give more money to police, right? So at the end of the day, locally, you just have to be smart to have local laws and local things in place where these public safety agencies have violence prevention organizations attached to them, so they can in turn get the resources that way. That's easier said than done in a lot of cities because of the political leadership and the things that they have. But in cities where they can get that accomplished, they need to be doing that for sure. Trying to raise the dollars and hit up these foundations and private sector individuals to funnel resources into those programs, because those programs benefit and help their businesses as well. And some of them are aware of that and they do support, but ultimately we're going to have to figure out how to be self-sufficient in this.
You know, man. One of the things I was thinking about. You remember when you used to do that. What we used to have with young people at the restaurant early on Saturday morning.
Yeah.
How old were them kids? Were they younger than 16, 17-year-old?
Yeah. Those were little kids, man. Elementary age. Some high school students time to time, but mostly elementary age kids, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one of those people that used to come all the time was a Dorian Murray, who's the commissioner now in the
Right.
county.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. When I saw that one of them kids that were involved in that Chancellor Avenue murder over there, that's what I was thinking about, right?
Right.
What you were doing with them young teenagers, catching them young and producing a Dorian Marys, like I think that, that was working, man. I think that we need to
Yeah.
find a way to go back to getting them kids as young as you were dealing with when you were having them come and actually,
Yeah.
talk to you early in the morning. You know what I mean?
We do. I agree with that. That's why the Street Academy is successful. I just was over there today. They got 35 guys over there, 3 girls over there that they're, I was in a class, they was having elevation in entrepreneurship, teaching them about the history of how they got in a situation, what they knew to get out of it. It was very powerful. The problem is you need a class like that, almost in every neighborhood going on, right? But just props and hats off to those guys, Ramid and the rest of those guys over there, Murdoch and them, who are in the quiet of the deep of the South Ward by Dayton Street. Got those kids in the Temple of Hip Hop who dropped out of school. We're now giving them a GED, getting them access to GED and giving them opportunity at the same time. And these are people from their community, from their neighborhood. This is not like some other kind of institution. This is a self-created institution in our neighborhood and community by people who came through those ranks, who are now providing the opportunity for young people to be focused. And that's what we need in a larger scale. I was talking to some of these pastors about using their spaces in the summer. Like we need to create Freedom School again, and not the Freedom School that they have now, like the Milquetoast Freedom School. We need like real Freedom School. On Saturdays, we need Freedom School after school where we gather kids together, man, and just really teach them social and political history. And we just have to do that. And cultural identity, we have to. That arms them. It arms them. I know it did. It armed me. It armed my siblings. It armed a lot of people I knew who grew up in that place. Even, with your own personal problems and the stuff going on, you still have a foundation that always reminds you of where you are.
A lot of people might not know what you mean by Freedom School. There's that term sometimes gets used. Some people are familiar, some people not. What do you mean by Freedom School, and what is inside of it? What are some of the education that goes on?
The Freedom Schools took place, some in the civil rights movement, and during that time, and they morphed into other things after that, and it really was about teaching folks the history of the movement itself, our history, who we are, and our relationship to it. I mean, some of the Freedom Schools, some of the original training that Ella Baker and them did was to train civil rights workers how to deal with protesting in the South. But ultimately, it was schools that we set up to teach our own history, our own ideology of who we are, right? And I think that alongside of that, we had the African Free Schools, we had the Panthers doing schools. I mean, people understood that we needed to teach the babies, right? That we needed to prepare a cadre. And we went away from that, the social, political, and cultural stuff. We went away from that. We left our kids to the devices of these people.
And what we're seeing is the effects of that right now, right? We're seeing the effects of that. And that was one of the issues, that when you talk about, what was going on at, I forget the name of that school, Jonathan, that, where you went down there, man, some kid damn near pushed you off of the sidewalk, you went down there. What was the name of that school, Jonathan?
I don't know. I don't remember what you're talking about. Might be the wrong person.
No. Remember when we had Roger Leone on, and he was talking about that school that we were saying that Zaid needed to get involved in. I can't think of it offhand, but it was
Yeah,
it
I'm not
was
sure.
it was when we had those kids come to City Hall. It
Oh,
was-
you're talking about,
well,
I've never been to actual global studies,
yeah,
so that
and
wasn't
remember,
a
man, one of the
conversation there.
things
But you're talking about global studies.
yeah, that most of them kids didn't know the history.
No, they don't know their
Well, the
own history.
adults, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's because the adults don't know the history. Like they don't. I was in when we did our book study, because we still do those book studies. We had one at the movie theater, and it was packed in there, and there was a lot of kids, and really talking about the relationship. We was studying the book, The Caste, you know, and really talking about caste systems and that was created around the world and history. And these kids really did not even understand the caste system that was associated with slavery. They think that Black people was just slaves and that was it, and then we got freedom. They don't know all the things that happened from the Middle Passage onward to rebellions, to the kind of systemic humiliation, to the brutality of slavery, to the undermining of people's rights and humanity and livelihood. They just don't know any of that, right? They don't know that. So when they was making comparisons between slavery and other forms of oppression around the world, they was really talking about it in a way that was uninformed and really making it seem like, oh, what are y'all upset about? Slavery was here and then it was over. Like that's really not what happened. And it just tells me that we're not educating our kids about the things that we need to educate them on. And look, we empower in some places, and at the end of the day, that can't happen. Like you can't hear that and see that and not want to address it. Like seriously.
yeah, that's exactly what we are, man. Because I think that when you talk to most of these kids, and they have no level of self-love, they have no level of understanding about from whence we really come. And you're right, their level of understanding stops at slavery. They don't know about the kings, the queens, the business owners, and all of those things. And that's
But they don't even know about slavery, brother. What's going on?
Sure.
Yeah, they don't even know about that. Like they just don't know about us, and that's the problem, man. These kids today have access to more information than any other generation before them ever did.
Yeah.
They just do. And to not have information about yourself is depressing, brother. And all of these things that we see happening in our community is a result of that. Right? We grew taller, not wiser. You know what I mean? And that's the problem there. And ultimately, like it just needs to be addressed. Like seriously, like we can't allow these folks to completely erase us off of the planet.
right.
And that's what's happening. I mean, this fool just put his name on the Kennedy Center. I mean, I don't know how crazy, more crazy this guy has to go or do before like this is really taken as seriously as it needs to be. Like this is bad what's happening right now.
Right.
It's very bad. It's beyond bad. It's serious. This is gonna have generational impacts and will set us back a ways. And we still got the mindset of these Negroes still running around trying to fit in. The reality is we have to realize we are on our own out here right now.
Yep.
It is interesting because you're like it's bad, and it's so bad that we are not recognizing how bad it is. Like because we get so used to the craziness, the things that are being said, the things that are being done that we don't talk about. But it kind of gets lost because we just say it's crazy. It's bad. What are some of the things, like what are two things that are going on right now federally that we are actually doing things to push back against? Because I think that
Well, I think they're pushing back on a lot of stuff, though, John. I think that people are pushing back on a lot of things. They're just not doing it collectively and strategically. I think that's a difference. It's just not happening to that level. And I think that we've become so desensitized, our community, so desensitized to this stuff that when you beat somebody up and you kick them while they down, at some point they just stay down. and or run. And the reality is we just become super desensitized to the things that's going on. So you have all these people having all these rallies, no kings, ain't no black people at none of this stuff. These big things that's going on, we're just not coming out. Why? Because we feel like, look, this is not about me. It's not about us. We're going to be in this situation. This is a situation we're in. It is what it is. I'm going to do my best to protect myself and my family, and vote. And hopefully that helps in some capacity, right? But that's the reality of it. And we just don't have the hardcore organizing, or we just cannibalizing each other in these cities, destroying each other's leadership, tearing each other down, attacking one another, which is make it simple and easier for these people to come in and do the things that they do. Like, I'm going to have a meeting with the working families coming up. Like, I plan on a meeting with them and them other folks about how do they attract more black people to these national movements, to these statewide movements. Why are we having these movements and we are comfortable with the fact that black people are not involved in them? Like, I go down there, you want me to be a part of it, I'm gonna speak out, I'm gonna do the stuff. But at the end of the day, there has to be, I'm uncomfortable going into all these spaces and not seeing black people.
Yeah. But again, man, it speaks to all those Negroes you were just talking about, because most of them have sold out for a job, right? So they don't want to be in there and say nothing that's going to go against, them having an opportunity to be there. So, maybe it is going to take somebody like you, to go there and say that, that it needs to be more of us involved in those meetings. But that word you use, desensitized. Most of our people are desensitized, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
With killing going on, and you talk about new job numbers that came out this week, where they said more and more African American males are unemployed under Donald Trump in this year. So you look at all of these things that are going on. We're desensitized to all of that.
Yeah, we are.
So
which is why we're not doing anything.
Yeah,
I mean, at that capacity.
But I do think that something that is positive that seems to be going on all over the country, and it's separate, right? But there's a lot of local organizing and there's a lot of local solutions being pushed, whether it's Newark, whether it's Baltimore, whether it's the stuff that they're doing on a grassroots level. It might not be collective nationally, but I think a lot more people are doing those really positive things. Like Newark, for example. I always talk about Newark and what Newark does all over the country in terms of like the actual grassroots solutions that have led, whether it be the Office of Nonviolence, whether it be the issues of reducing homelessness, not solving, but reducing it so that you don't have tent cities that you had in Los Angeles, in Newark, right? Like, so there are ways of the programs that you had that were literally giving housing to people who were on HUD assisted housing so that they can own their homes. There are so many different programs, I think, that were innovative, that were different, that were used in Newark that we just don't talk about enough, not just amongst each other, but collectively, right? Like for example, all those things were going on in Newark, but most people didn't talk about that in the governor's race, right? Most people, like Newark now has an education system that it was deemed by the state as being high performing, and nobody seems to know about it. Nobody seems to talk about it. So I think that there are so many little victories that are going on that, in spite of all of this stuff, is there a way to lead with that? Like, I think at these statewide meetings, all of those positive things that Newark has done to get from one point to the other, those are models. Those are things that Trenton should be using. Those are things that each of the different places that have to deal with these problems should be doing. And those solutions should be like, those should get the money statewide funneled into them. There might not be anything we can do about Trump, but we can do something about this. Yes.
Oh yeah, and we could do something about Trump too. Do something about have that they want to give Newark credit.
All right, we can't. I think you're coming out. You're going out, Mayor.
He's starting to go in and out.
Yeah, you're going in and out. We can't hear you.
I'm still here. You hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now. We can hear you now. You were going in and out, but we can hear you now.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
we
yeah,
can.
yeah. I'm gonna have to run into this men's meeting in a second though,
Okay,
because it looked like they calling for me.
All right.
okay. Can you also tell us, just before you leave, what is the importance of men's meeting? I always thought that those things were nationwide, underappreciated. They should be models. Why are the men's meetings so important?
Well, I mean, besides the fact that give us a chance to fellowship and get a chance to talk about some of the issues that we have in common, but it also gives people the opportunity to see other folks doing things that come from the same neighborhood, same communities that they are, to them to build companies and cooperate and strategize with one another about how to seize power in their own neighborhood, from economic power to social power, how to do that collectively and not feel like a victim or helpless, that they can do this together and to see the positive energy that people use and bounce off of each other in these meetings have always been helpful. Like, and then it inspires people to go out there, community, be leaders and be representatives, ambassadors, and that's what it does. And so it's been very helpful for us.
All right, man. We're gonna let you go, man. We know you got to get into. So thanks, my brother, for coming through.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Peace. But that represents a real problem for us, Jonathan. I think that, that's one of the things, man, I think we need to be talking with Roger Leone about. We do have the power in the city of Newark to be able to, like what you ran last week when we wasn't on was about the Amistad Act, right? We're, being able to teach some of that history because as he said, he said them adults down at Global don't know the history, right? So it's hard for them to see the valuability of Black people and how do you talk to Black people and how do you talk to young Black kids. But that kind of stuff is not being taught, you know.
And it's
And
interesting
I'm
because like
saying,
they're
and I'm saying if we have the power through, here in Newark, through Roger Leone, then we ought to be able to institute that, right? In some kind of way.
and we should also know about the stuff that is being instituted as well, right? Like Newark has been having their history department's been having these speaker series to educate the history teachers when they're having different professors come up, give lectures, talk, they pass out their books, they give book signings. They're doing things to literally have these speakers, this level of education go on, but they also have to publicize it more. One of the things I said always to the person who's running this is this has got to be live streamed. The community needs to see this. The Paul Ortiz was a prominent speaker. He wrote about Black and Latinx history and a book that's very powerful in our city, especially given the issues of global studies and especially given the history of the large population we have of Latinos in Newark and Black people in Newark, and having an understanding of white supremacy within our histories is essential. That is being taught to the teachers themselves, giving the person who wrote it coming up here. This person, Paul Ortiz, did a lot of work in Florida, uncovering massacres of Black people that were uncovered for years. A lot of the laws that Florida passed to push back against the teaching of African American studies and the teaching about African history and African American history came from the work that Paul Ortiz did in these communities with other Black people to uncover this stuff, have conversations about it. And a lot of white people, so some embraced it, many more were feeling uncomfortable with it, and that there were massacres of Black people that were covered in Florida, and and what those questions raised. So I think that there are things that have to be done, but I also think that the things that are being done have to be talked about even more. And I think that I am seeing that as even more as a problem, that we have to get information out. We have to we have to we have to do the things so that people know what's going on as well. And so, like for example, Malcolm X's daughter is an advisor to global studies. I didn't know it, right? Until Leon came on here and was talking about it. And even when he talked about it almost like, it was, he mentioned it, but he mentioned it in conjunction with other things that were going on. And a lot of people just didn't know that Malcolm X's daughter not only advises Malcolm X Shabazz High School, but also advises is an advisor to global studies as well. So I think that we have to
That's the kind
know
of
and be
thing that
involved
should be
in.
centered.
Right.
That's the kind of thing that should be centered. Atala Shabazz, is Malcolm's eldest daughter,
Right.
was a sitting diplomat for the country of Belize on the strength of her family's projection. Not a citizen of Belize, but made an honorary citizen of Belize to be their diplomat to the United Nations by virtue of who she was. That's an incredible leadership story. That's accessible in our hands at a school that's supposed to be teaching leadership in our town. That shouldn't be something to be on the edges about. It should be central, right? And we need to be more demanding and putting some things in a more mandatory kind of way, demanding more of our educators that don't know this history that they're supposed to be teaching, to bring our kids together instead of turning their heads as they turn on each other in this violence. I'm sorry, Jonathan. I just, as soon as Malcolm's name comes up, that's a trigger for me.
Yeah,
No,
and the
but
thing is, that's something that like most people did not know, that she is literally a consultant to Newark Public Schools and has been for years.
yeah, but Jonathan, that's not I mean, that's well and good, but it's not reaching to the point where we're getting to those 16-year-olds, because as you heard the mayor said, one of the things he discovered when he went to global is that those teachers that he was talking to didn't know any history either. So how could they teach it to those kids who are there at global,
Exactly.
what they don't know? So I mean,
that needs to be mandated. That's my point.
right. And so we got a 16-year-old that's now going to be charged with 3 murders when somebody could have been teaching him something and getting to him before he got with those 30-year-olds or those 20-something-year-olds. And
No,
and hold on a second, John. And one of the conversations we were having with Roger is that he was going to pull Zaid in, right? To have a conversation so that he's talking to these folks and began to teach them some on the ground stuff. Listen, man.
give us some background, Ed. Like you're talking about the 16-year-old. Most people don't even know. I didn't even know. What
So
are you talking about in
it
context?
was one of the 16-year-olds with what the mayor alluded to earlier with the murders that took place last month on Chancellor
On Chancellor Avenue?
Avenue. Right.
Yeah.
So they found the people who did it. I didn't know that. Can you just break all that down?
Yeah. So everyone was caught. Everyone has been arrested and charged. And one of them that was charged was 16-year-old. What was a 16-year-old? Of course, because he's 16, we don't know his name. All we know is his age. And so, but here's a young 16-year-old that's now being charged with 3 murders, first degree at that, right? So you literally know his life is over. But the point is that at what point, John, did he get lost in the system, right? And that's what I'm talking about. And one of the things I was saying, I was having this conversation with Bashir this week. We should have a meeting with Roger. And I'm saying, I don't know this, John. Maybe you could tell us this. Do they still have truant officers that go out and look for these kids that are out of school?
Yes.
That are out of school?
Yes.
So
like there's a truancy task force that was brought back after, like Cammy Anderson got rid of it. Leon brought it back. There are attendance counselors. There are people who go to your house. There's an entire apparatus in place in every school in terms of trying to get more attendance. And overall in the district, attendance has been higher, right? Like one of the reasons why it's a high performing district is because the attendance numbers are up because there's truancy. Part of what I'm talking about is that we have to know the good things that are going on in the district too, and where it's falling short, and where these things happen. But in terms of attendance task force, truancy task force, all that stuff is in place, and the numbers, at least the numbers, are higher than they've ever been when it comes to attendance and getting people in school. Now, that might need to be aggregated for what neighborhoods, what schools, who still is not coming to school. Because when you have issues of violence and when people fall through the cracks, the question is, how do they not fall through the cracks? So when we're having these conversations, I think it's important to recognize that at Westside, they got people graduating and getting their associate degrees while they're in high school. They're graduating with a high school diploma and they're graduating with their associate degrees. When we are in, so I think that's important to have all those conversations, including people who are slipping through the cracks.
Yeah,
So we're not making like
yeah.
the generalities that,
John, I got it.
everything, right?
I got it. Except that I heard Kirk Franklin say this on this thing that he has. He does this podcast called Kings. And so he was talking to T.I., he was talking to Jermaine Dupri and a couple of other people. And one of the things he said was, and I thought this was just based on what the mayor just said. Listen at what he said, Zaid. He said to them brothers, he said, we need to have a conversation. He said, all of us are successful. He said, but we all come from the mud. Let's be honest about that. And people in the mud, John, don't want to hear about no statistics. They don't have time for that, John. This is what this brother said. He's rich, right? Lives in a private community, but he was talking about, all the violence in our neighborhood. And that is exactly what he said to T.I. And T.I. said, he built this complex in Atlanta, and it's basically for homeless young people, right? Not for older adults, but young people need to be given an opportunity who come from the mud. And one of the things that he said was, he was saying they don't have time for that pretty conversation, John, and we don't. We need people, and I'm saying this, and I'm not saying this because Zaid is my brother,
but we also need to be accurate in what we're talking about too.
Them in such a way, and I'm talking about teenagers. I'm not talking about adults. I'm talking about these young kids that the mayor was reaching at Kings when he would get up early on a Saturday morning and he would go and have these real talk conversations with 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds. And you heard him said that Mary was one of those kids who came through that, right? She was a young child. And that's what I'm talking about, John. It's well and good to have, Sister Shabazz and all of that. But them kids that are in the mud, they ain't trying to hear that, John. They're not trying to hear that. And the kids, and you already know this, John, the kids that Bashir teach are not the kids that could survive at science, because they're not going to be underneath that no tolerance rule. You got to have a lot of patience for these kids. You've got to have a lot of love for these kids, because them kids will get put out of school immediately at science, right? So it's easy to teach those kids and talk that kind of talk, but you can't talk that kind of talk to them kids over there like that, right? So we've got to be able to find a way to teach them and then put people in front of them who can talk to them. Because at this very moment, that word that the mayor used is correct. We all are desensitized, John. People die, we get murdered, and we act like it's no big deal.
But I think that there are two things going on. You've got to look at the successes that Shabazz is having. Like, their test scores are up. Like, what I'm saying is that each of the schools right now is doing some really positive things. Shabazz is doing some really positive things. They've got this debate team that's doing really well. They've got kids who are graduating in different programs. They've got Shabazz has 2 kids who went to Stanford in 2 years based on a football scholarship, because they're doing some serious work there. So I'm saying that when you make generalizations about schools and kids, it's more complicated. Are kids getting lost? Yes. Do things need to be done, like Office of Violence Prevention? Yes. All of that. Everything you're saying, 100% agree. But we also can't pretend that these schools aren't doing some serious work, which is why their scores are going up, which is why their graduation rates are going up, right? Like, so we have to also get out of just a mentality that is always failure, especially when in these schools there's a lot of like success going on with the teachers and kids who are getting down and doing their things.
What say you, Zaid?
It's tough. It's tough. I mean, and I'm looking at this from we are actually trying to do in Newark through using the community-based violence intervention strategy is that, we should have a far greater influence, access, relationship with the Newark Board of Education and the Newark school system than we do. Because that structure, that strategy is built for the very thing that you're talking about. And we are, the folks who we have our hands on are ones who we get our hands on them when they are in trouble and at risk and that at the edge of being put out of school and going into juvie or getting ready to be aged up, right? Where if we had or more fully integrated into a school-centered community-based violence intervention strategy, we could have our hands on more kids, right? And on those kids in those earlier phases and spaces where we can actually be of some help to them to help them change directions and not fall through the cracks of all the violence and the bad statistics and all those situations that a lot of our kids fall into. So there's, that's, my frustration is there. We have demonstrated the good work that we've done in the places where the work has been allowed to happen and where the work has been resourced, but a place where it should naturally be, it's still not there yet. We're still on the edges, right? And
Right.
that's that kind of strategy should be more central than it is on the edges. In fact, and this is, I also struggle with my young men doing this too, because I said, listen, Malcolm is the daddy of your credible messages, right? Do not forget how far you can go with this. Riding that kind of example that we come from with this work and really taking that to our kids where they really need it.
But you're absolutely right. We're on the edges of it, Zaid. And the problem is that we've got to come beyond the edges. And the reason why we've got to do that is because when you have, listen, man, when you get a 16-year-old and they get in the judicial system, we're talking about in 2 years, he's going to be waived up.
That's right.
Even if they don't charge him as an adult now. 2 years, Zaid, he's going to be waived up as an adult. Right? And he's going to be in that system for the rest of his life. We're talking about someone being charged with 3 murders.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And I'm saying, let's have the real talk, right? Let's have the real talk. We bring in, our prosecutor here in Essex County, and let's have that real talk.
That's another space.
Right.
Another space that needs integration into this whole thing. I'm glad to see that Mayor Ted Green is beginning to be responsive, because we had some things pop off in East Orange.
Right.
It hadn't popped off in a minute, right? And I'd been, some of us have been in Ted's ear for years. I said, look, why do we not have in Essex County a larger expanded notion of the strategy that we're breaking ground with in Newark? So I'm glad he's starting to listen a little bit. But why isn't why is we not having that conversation with Ted Stevens? You know what I'm saying? Why not? Why are we not having we had a hell of a program, with the operation that I used to work for called Trauma to Trust, where law enforcement and community was trained together in each other's trauma, and law enforcement had to learn that they are bearers of community trauma, right? And they need to learn how to operate and deal with that kind of thing. Why are we not having that? Why is that not expanded further out, throughout what is Essex County in those other places where we're having these problems,
Right?
Where we're facing these same conditions,
right?
So for all the good that has been done, there are logical places where this work needs to continue to grow and grow at, and be centered in a way where it can make a broader difference, even more beyond what we've done already.
Right.
And that also requires, and let me say this, we got a great mayor, a handful on city council gets down with it, right? Everybody on city council is not embracing that,
Right.
right? We mentioned Adorian. Adorian is now a commissioner, right? A child who has been through some of our programs and has become one of our young emerging stars, and
Yes.
whatnot. But but where are the rest of the commissioners in understanding what we've done
Right.
with people like her?
Right.
And embracing that. And I mean embracing it not just philosophically, but earmarking resources from county and city into the work and not being overly dependent on the federal government that'll turn around and cut your head off like Trump did.
Right.
That should be natural coming from us. The Fed should be catching up to us, not us depending on the feds.
Right. Right. But at this particular point, Zaid, I think we need to be working every channel, because I think that right now, what rings in my mind, is on one end you got A. Dorian Mary, right? On the other end, you got this unknown 16-year-old, right, who's charged with 3 murders. 2 extremes, but coming from the same place, and the mayor always refers to Newark as this place. This place is hard, man, right? Yeah. And in this place that's hard, we need people. We need people that have survived this, but we also need people that love these kids enough to be able to say, "I understand how difficult it is for you, and that I understand what it's going to take in order to be able to help you, so you don't get to that point," right? But all of the issues that they're dealing with, and so when he talks about those community schools, he's right. I mean, I think that's the only way out, man.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think it's the only way out, because
city council. Last time I addressed city council, the question is, who do we have our hands on, right? That young man was somebody who we did not have enough hands on,
right?
Because we did not have enough resources to reach him, or that young kid, that 14-year-old kid that got into that situation in North Newark, where he not knowingly he gets confronted with armed, masked men, not knowing they're the police,
right?
And pops one off. His life is done.
That's right.
But we didn't have our hands on that kid. Our resources don't extend that far. If we had our hands on that kid, maybe that would have turned out different.
Right. Right. But that's why I'm saying, Zaid, what we do have is, right, so if the Board of Education gets $1 billion, right, I'm saying that somewhere in there we need to be talking with Roger Leone that says, well, because these kids have to be registered in some school at some point as a teenager. And if they drop out of school, where are they? Somebody know where they at. And we got to be able to go and find them, and then try at all costs to be able to redeem them, right? We just can't throw them away, because on one level you got a 14-year-old, on another level you got a 16-year-old, and we don't know where they are. Somebody know where they are.
And it's kind of like, I'm actually always been surprised that the Office of Violence Prevention has not worked even more so with Newark Public Schools. I know that there is a relationship, and that safe schools, walking home, etc. But the way that the Office of Violence Prevention works, they literally identify kids or people, right, who have exhibited behaviors, violence. They've been caught up in the system, and they intervene at those points. Like, they know where violence happens. They know the individuals who will be involved in that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And they make the interventions at that point. And those interventions have largely been very successful. And I was always surprised that there isn't like a synergy with the Newark Public Schools doing the same thing, right? As in, kids who might be caught up, kids who you can't find them. I know that they have a truancy task force, and and Marquise said a dropout prevention task force is needed. I know Youth Build is part of that. Youth Build was is an organization in Newark that targets kids who dropped out. And I think to some extent, it's maybe knowing all the different things that are going on and see, well, where are we missing people? I think it's going to be very important to find out more, or the people who know, to find out more about this child who is involved in these homicides, and see what happened, where did he slip through the cracks, what institutions could he have been a part of that could have prevented his involvement in that.
Like the
And
Street Academy, right? Maybe started the conversation. I'm talking about the Street Academy. That was
right,
one of his first programs that he developed with this strategy, right? Right.
and the Street Academy, I believe, is still going on. That
Yeah,
we still have a Street Academy.
that's a resource that needs expansion, right? That needs to be citywide. A safe passage program that the street team does. That's in certain schools in certain districts, right? That's the kind of thing that should have been built citywide, right? But it requires city leadership, right? Not a mayor by himself, but city leadership buying into that and willing to put the resources up out of city coffers to make that happen
But I think it also requires us to talk about it even more.
all
Like,
the
we have to
time.
know,
All the
right?
time.
Like, we have, a lot of people don't know that Youth Build exists, so we don't call for its expansion. A lot of people don't know what truancy task. People didn't even know truancy task force was still a thing, or the ways in which people can be like, oh, so since you can identify all these kids who are out and you have all these follow-ups, well, when does it go over or cross over into other things that you need to talk about with other programs that actually work very, very well? So I think some of it is us knowing what actually works in the city, what has been getting results in the city, and then expanding and then demanding those things be expanded. I think that Newark is in a different place than a lot of other cities, because in a lot of other cities, as the mayor talks about, they can just talk about the problem. They can't talk about those solutions. They are focused on this problem, and they don't have the understanding of solutions. In Newark, we had a lot of solution oriented people, both on the education side and on the city side, that have been getting actual results with different things. I think we have to talk about it more. I think we have to know what programs need to be expanded. And I think that really is the challenge. I'm really interested to know, when the story comes out, these kids, why they did what they did. Because even the people who are older seem to have been young. They seem to have been
Mhm,
just not kids anymore,
mhm,
making foolish decisions. Is
mhm.
there any, like, do we know what the story is or why they did what they did? Because it seemed like they weren't shooting at targets. They seemed like they were just shooting innocent people. Like, do you know any more about what happened?
No, we don't know the motive, John. That hasn't come out yet, and but the thing is, Jonathan, listen, I think everything that all of us are saying is true, right? That there are some good things that are going on. Yeah, there are some programs but I think that all of that has to happen. But I think what Marquise just put up is really, I think the and I'm talking about 10-year-olds to say 16 or 17-year-olds. When he says that we need that prevention task force needed, that is exactly what we need. That's what we need, right? And that needs to be apart from anything else, but it needs to be funded by the Board of Education, because they know where these kids are, right? They know these young kids, when they get out of grammar school, if they don't go to high school at 9th, 10th, or 11th grade. How do we create a special task force that deals specifically with that? And no matter who these kids are, when we find out that they're not in the system, they drop out, we need to be able to go and find those kids, right? And we need to be with them, working with them, right? And finding a way, Jonathan, to pull them back in. And if nothing at all, we need to follow them, right? Because at any moment, Jonathan, you got these 20-year-olds, these 30-year-olds that are pulling these kids in and impressing upon them to become killers, right? I mean, you talk to anybody who spent 30 years or 40 years in prison, and they go back and look at their 16-year-old selves and what they would say to their 16-year-old selves. Well, the thing is now, Jonathan, is that we need to be able to do that. That's why I was making the statement I was making about, being able to talk with the mothers, right? Because most of these young boys are going home and they're staying with their mothers. They're not living with their fathers. So if we can get the mothers that are having problems with their kids to say, why don't you bring your child in? He's not in school. He's not in school. And let's see if we can put him in some kind of, a dropout prevention task force program, right? Where we're working with those kids. But we need people, Jonathan, who can really talk to these kids on the level that they need to be talked to. I just think that's real talk, man. And I'm interested in the mothers, right? Because as I said to the mayor, I remember when he said that to them, when he said that in a speech, and he was saying to all of the mothers who can't, who are having troubles with their sons that they can't deal with, to bring them to him. And you heard him say that there are mothers who are bringing their sons to the police and actually literally saying that to them. And the police are saying, well, we can't deal with them either. So
or you would not want the police to deal with them, right? Like the police are probably the last people that you want to deal with them. But that is why I think that an expansion of the work that the Office of Violence Prevention does is needed, right? Because we know it works. It's been proven to work. So it has to be expanded because you still have situations like this going on that shouldn't go on. Marquise Lewis just said that you have 8 people's lives who are destroyed forever, and that is, and really it's more than that, because you have the people who were killed, you have the people who are suspects, and you have all their family members,
right.
And you have all the people who love them, and you have all the people who cared about them, right? Like so, and you have the people who just didn't feel safe. This was widespread community trauma. When this happened, the entire community got shook because of what happened. And now they're shook because one kid was 16.
Yeah.
It is one of those things where you're just like, it is unnecessary. Why? And I want to know more information, but I fear that when we finally get more information, it won't make a difference because it will be that much more senseless. They shot off. Were they shooting? Like, it seems like they were just shooting down the street and hit innocent people.
That's exactly what they were doing, Jonathan. We don't know the motive, so we don't know why. So we can't speculate on that.
Right.
Yes, exactly what they were doing. They were shooting indiscriminately down the block, right? And they wind up, killing 3 people, right, whose lives are gone forever. But the point is, Jonathan, I'm saying, using what's in our hands, we do control the Board of Education in the city of Newark, right? We do have the ability to find out who are all of these teenage children, where they are. We do have the ability to do that, right? We just need to be able to create the kind of task force that are necessary to be able to do those kinds of things. I just know what's going to happen. I know once this 16-year-old gets waved up in 2 years, I know what that reality is going to look like, right? And he's no longer going to be a child. And that is if the prosecutor doesn't move to charge him as an adult, right?
Because he's 16. 16, you can literally be charged as an adult, right?
And what I'm saying is we need to be having a different conversation and have a different school system, man, right? We need to develop. If the man's saying these schools that we need to be talking about, that we need to be talking about who these freedom schools that we need to be talking about, then we need to be talking to the right people who can educate those kids and deal with those kids and educate the teachers that the mayor is saying are not educated themselves. We need to do a re-education.
And I think that it becomes even a deeper question where we just have to get people who know the different things that are going on need to all be talking to each other. The people on the Board of Education who know the things that they're doing need to be talking to the people in the city who know what they're doing, or at least we need to know more about these conversations because these conversations could be being had. I don't know if they're being had or not, but We need to know that.
I don't know if they're being had, but you heard the
Right.
man. You heard the man just say that he was talking about doing these freedom schools. So
Right.
and when he says that these teachers don't know either, well, he would know better than we do. Why? Because he's Roger Leone's boss, so he would know better than we do whether or not these teachers know Black history or if they're teaching that to them kids, right?
Well,
Kids
in terms of that.
And he says the teachers don't know. Well, we don't need to go and have no major discussion with these people. We know that they don't.
Well, you also, the thing and the reason why that conversation needs to be had is because they're not each other's bosses, right? Like the mayor isn't the superintendent's boss, because they're different organizations, and they need to know what the other is doing, right? Like, or the Office of Violence Prevention will be all up in Newark Public Schools already. So and the work that Newark Public Schools is doing to do attendance and get attendance up. And like, I just don't know if both sides are at all times working together for solutions. Because when you're talking about freedom schools, the kid who may need it, we might establish there's freedom schools that exist in East Orange and South Orange Maplewood. There are freedom schools that exist in different places, but the kids who might need it, the kid who was the shooter might not have access to that. That might be something that Office of Violence Prevention might have access to. That might be with somebody who is dealing with kids who fall through the cracks or dealing through it. Right?
Jonathan, let me say this, Jonathan. There are laws, man, right, that only the school system have access to a child's information, right?
Right.
That the Office of Violence and Prevention is not a legal entity, right? So that kind
but
of
it is a legal entity.
No, it's a corporation, Jonathan. It's a not-for-profit, right? So they operate underneath a certain umbrella. But what I'm saying is, John, there are
Question:
like,
I thought the Office of Violence Prevention was an office in the city of Newark under public safety.
Yeah.
It's not nonprofit.
It
exists
it's a
under the
nonprofit.
city. There are nonprofits. There are a lot of nonprofits that get funding from the Office of Violence Prevention, but the Office of Violence Prevention is part of the city of Newark.
Yeah, it's part of public safety.
Right, public safety. But
Right.
Jonathan, the point is, certain information is not divulged to them, right? That is divulged to the Board of Education about
Right.
a particular child, right?
Right.
His behavior, his mental health, or his physical health, right?
And that can't be released, right? That by state law and federal law, there's privacy in terms of education. Absolutely.
Right. And also there's HIPAA laws, right?
Right.
Certain
For
laws
mental health, right.
where you can't release certain information. But what I'm saying is, John, if you have an agency like Marquise was suggesting, that was a part of Board of Education, then you operating from someplace different, right? Where now you intricately involved in working to get to a 16-year-old because you now know something about his file. You now have some information that you can go and deal with him or have him in a program where you can work with him, right? But again, it comes down to the teachers. It comes down to, the people who are part of that program. All of those things, Jonathan, I just don't think we have time, to really go and have all these conversations anymore. We know what needs to be done. And again, we have somebody like a Principal Kafele who got all of this experience in our community. We need to be tapping in. We've got to be working at trying to get this done. And I'm telling you, Jonathan, listen, and Zaid, I know you can bear me witness. We're gonna have another 16-year-old if we don't do something about that.
Yeah.
Right? You heard the mayor say, listen at how horrible it is what he said. He said after them boys did that murder,
They went to the studio.
Think about that.
Wait, hold on. Stop. Whoa, I missed that. Remember, I came on a little late. I did not know he was talking about the murders on Chancellor. Yo, repeat that. Like,
right.
You said that after they shot up the street and killed 3 people,
Yes.
3 innocent people,
Yes.
they went into a studio?
That's what the mayor said, brother. Think about
Damn.
that. Think about that for a minute.
Wow.
How horrible that is, man. Right? And that's what I'm
Wow.
trying to tell you, Jonathan. We don't have time, man. We you know,
Wow. But I also, that's one of those things that's, I think all the conversations that we're having tonight are really good because it helps us narrow down the stuff that we're talking about. We're not talking about, we know that we have to focus on people who have fallen through the cracks, and at the same time know that the stuff that's been working for a whole lot of people to get crime down and all the other stuff is good. Keep doing it. Keep doing the things that are going on at Shabazz. Keep doing the things that are going on at Central. Keep doing the things that are going on at West Side. But expand some of that stuff that's going on within the city of Office of Violence Prevention to get people who've fallen through the cracks. We got to know more about their story. We got to, I mean, a lot more people have to be talked to and brought into this conversation so that if there are pockets of stuff that if there's stuff that's going on that most people who most people who make laws, pass laws, right? Most people who are dealing with the public safety, et cetera, aren't even thinking about someone just shot up a street and just went in to make some music. Like, like you're not going to be able to relate. You're not going to be able to know where it's coming from. So you need people who are in the community who have an understanding of
Jonathan,
where this is. So
Jonathan,
absolutely, I'm agreeing with you.
did you just see what look at what Kafele just said?
Right on. I thank you. I was trying to come to that.
Right?
The people who are needed in the early grades are not there.
Mm.
This is a crisis, a state of emergency, and that should be the first point of intervention and interdiction.
That's all I'm talking about right there, Jonathan.
Right
That's
there.
it.
Right there.
That's it.
Not to say, and plus the work that needs to be done with those who are already in crisis and in trouble, right? But that and the other side of this system that has no problem locking our kids up,
Right.
understands that weakness, that contradiction, that condition plainly because they build their prisons based on that part, that time, that moment where our kids need the love and attention and direction the most,
Right.
and they're not getting it. And that's where the chain of crisis begins.
And so that is an addition to the stuff that you're talking about and expanding that Office of Violence Prevention. And here's a question. I don't know the answer to this. Zaid, you would know more about this. In terms of dealing with early childhood trauma, the things that, like, is that something the Office of Violence Prevention or techniques they use, is that stuff they do that can be expanded or should be implemented inside of a public school system?
Well, there's a need for that conversation to happen, right? I mean, first, what examination, there should be an examination of what is in place already, right? Structurally, and why it's not working, right? And with that kind of assessment, we could be more clear about how we want to move into those spaces in those times with real strategies, right? There should be, more to the point of your question, there should be an ongoing organic conversation between public safety and our schools. It just should be. It's a natural conversation that should be happening. Why it's not,
because you work in the Office of Violence Prevention, you're like, this needs to be a constant conversation.
Absolutely.
In terms of violence prevention, absolutely. What are you doing? Absolutely. What are the techniques that are being used?
Absolutely.
How is this going on? Because these things impact all of us, right? Yeah. Because the kids who were killed, one of the kids who was killed was a Newark public school student.
Yeah, right? 10 years old. I mean, what are we talking about?
Like, you have an entire so when you're talking about the victims of this, like, their entire class setting, their entire school setting, right? Like, their entire school setting is traumatized by this. Yes. And we have to make sure that we all know more about what's going on, because it's not like people aren't working. It's not like the city's not doing a lot to try to prevent trauma. They're not trying to do all the things that the Office of Violence Prevention does. They're not trying to work with nonprofit organizations that deal with violence prevention and giving these block grants, et cetera. It's not like they're not truancy task force that are in place. And it's not like there's not counseling and money that went to counseling that goes on in Newark Public School. But it's not good enough that people are working. They got to be working more together. And so that everybody knows the programs that work and the programs that don't, and where we are needed, where we need to expand. So yeah, there needs to be these constant conversations that are going on.
Right, man. But listen, I'm telling y'all, man. You know, I'm listen. Principal Kafele is not the author of the conversation he's talking about now. There was a brother called Jawanza Kunjufu, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he wrote a book called
a little
The
while ago.
Conspiracy to Destroy Young Black Boys, right?
Right.
And he said that if we don't catch these boys by the time they're in third grade, we lose them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember, John, I'm telling you that this is the truth about
Right.
me. I can remember, man, you know, the greatest experience I had was 1 through 3. When I got to the 4th grade, I had a white teacher in the city of Newark. And that white teacher completely lost me, man. Because I was in love with my 3rd grade teacher, Miss Pace, right? At Robert Treat, which is now the school you teach at, John, which is now science.
The location, right? In that location.
Right. Yeah. And I can tell you, man, when I got to the 4th grade, Jonathan, I began to lose interest, man. Right. And I'm telling you that it wasn't until I got to 8th grade and at 12 years old and heard the teachings of the Nation of Islam that my life changed. Right. At 12. And had not it been for that, I'm telling you, Jonathan, I'd have been lost, man.
And I was 16.
But I learned the knowledge of self at 12 years old, and that changed my life. And so when Brother Kafele says what he says, that we've got to get in there and we've got to go to these lower grades, that's where we've got to go, John. Because I'm telling you, by the time these kids get 16, man, it's too late. It's too late, man. And we've got to be willing to put the work in and get the people who can really deal with these kids the way that they need to be dealt with, right? And that's why I was saying to Dawn what I was saying to her. You know, when I said, listen, we need to have a meeting by which we make it, available for mothers and their sons to come. And we're not attacking anyone. We're just trying to save our kids. And I'm saying that the Board of Education know where these children are, right? It'd be difficult for us to be able to go find them, to be able to, look into their jacket and know all of the nuances, the things we need to be dealing with. We need to find a way to be able to do that.
Right.
And
like
so,
when you're talking,
and it really is an emergency, John. It really is. And you heard the man said he was down in Trenton today, and you heard what he said. He said
there are people who have no idea. They talk about the problem, but they don't talk about any solutions that are there.
And at one point you heard him say he wanted to tell them, fools, stop talking. Because you have no idea what we're dealing with. You have really no idea.
Whereas the strength that we have in Newark is that we have a lot of people who have been working on solutions locally. We've got a lot of people who've been doing objectively powerful work to get results locally. They just need to talk to each other.
Right.
Like we've got people who've been doing some serious work in Newark Public Schools. We've got some people who've been doing some serious work on the city side. They got to communicate. Principal Kafele talked about early childhood education. You talked about 4th grade. I remember my 4th grade teacher who put me in the second reading group told me that I couldn't read because what she eventually revealed to my dad was she didn't like the way I talked because I would correct her and and about history, whatever, right? Like, and she said that I didn't know my place, and so she put me in the second reading group. She didn't tell that to me. She confidently, when my dad was talking to her about why I was in the second reading group, she let that slip out. That was a mistake on her part because
Wow.
my
She
dad had
didn't
some
like the
choice
way
words
you
with her.
talk.
Didn't like the way I spoke. Thought I didn't know my place. I was just an uppity. I was just an uppity black boy. I was just, just because my dad, mom, sister, between my dad, my mom, and my sister, I got a lot of history lessons, right?
Oh yeah, you did.
My
Yeah,
sister
you
my
did.
sister would give me issues of Jet magazine, show me the beauty of the week, and be like, "This is a beautiful black woman. This is a beautiful black woman. You don't want no stringy hair. Like this. Look at this. This is a beautiful black woman, right?
But Dad, I wish you
That's
were
the
watching,
right.
baby.
I'm like in kindergarten, right? I'm in the kindergarten, and she's having that conversation with me. We knew who Mary Baraka was when I was growing up. They were involved. The level of consciousness was there, casual consciousness, right? Like, we didn't have it was casual consciousness that we had within our household. Also growing up in a time where we knew like Imperiale was running for mayor, and I was a kid hearing all these conversations and knowing all this stuff that was going on, in terms of the song, right? Like the vote for Gibson song that was there, right? Don't vote for Imperiale. Gibson is the one to vote for. And then Mama told me, yeah, but that didn't pan out because Gibson got in office and started betraying black people. So you know how that went. So like but in fourth grade, though, by a white teacher who did not like the way that I spoke, did not know that I had certain knowledge, because she said something that was like something crazy in class, like white people were enslaved too, because in Egypt, black people were the Egyptians and white people were the Jews, and the Egyptians enslaved the Jews. So everyone had it. I was like, wait, Jews in Egypt, they were black too. Like it's Africa, right? Like, so I'm in like fourth grade, but I got put to the second reading group,
Oh,
and
that's right.
I'm like trying to figure out why, and I'm not
You
thinking
were Michael the militant midget.
she got me. I wasn't even militant. I was just stating what was, right. Like, I wasn't trying to be militant. I just knew what was, right. And at the same time, I did not know enough to know that I was being punished for it. And I literally thought that I had problems reading. I was like not liking school, that kind of stuff. And if it wasn't for the intervention of my dad, just looking at me and asking me what was wrong, and me not even knowing what's wrong. And he was like, well, I was like, I got put to the second reading group. And he was like, well, are you having trouble reading? I was like, I didn't think I was, but I must, right? So you put me in the second reading group, that means I can't read. That means I'm having struggling, right? I mean, that's the way I interpreted it, right? Even that interpretation was wrong, because like first or second reading group, the hierarchies, like they're messing with us at a young age. I didn't know this until years later. Like, I didn't know that she had said that until I was in college. My father told me about what happened. So I didn't know
Wow.
about why I automatically got, like, my father came in and I'm on the first reading group again. But then I realized when I'm grown that there was a system of hierarchies that was playing out. All the black kids were in the second reading group, most of the white kids were in the first reading group, that
Tracking.
there was segregation that was going on in the same class,
That's right.
because it was an integrated school at a time where they didn't want, like, a lot of the teachers didn't want integration, right? Or they had these preconceived notions of race and racism. That you talk
But,
to
but,
a fourth
but,
grade
Jonathan,
teacher, she was like, I
but,
want race.
Jonathan, the operative thing that you said, you had your father who was able to advocate for you.
Right.
These kids
Right.
don't, Jonathan.
Right. And so I'm saying, like, that when you're talking about that fourth grade piece, and you're talking about how that is kind of like you could break kids in the fourth grade and nobody will ever know why. Like, you get hit
Right.
with like this stuff,
That's
and
right.
nobody will ever know why. No one ever be able to tell.
That's
It
right.
just is. It just happened. It just, right. My kid just, and you'll conclude, my kid just doesn't like school.
That's
My
right.
kid is just
That's
not
right.
an academic. Dr.
You
Tommy Curry, a good friend, academic, powerful academic, teaches at the University of Scotland, does Black male studies. I'd recommend everybody reading The Man Not. If you are a Black man, if you love a Black man, if you know Black people, you should read this book.
What's the book?
The Man Not. It's called The Man Not by Dr. Tommy J. Curry.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, right.
He's a brilliant academic, but he talks about the way in which we are perceived, have been perceived, and the ways in which both white people and black people savage black men and black boys,
Yeah.
and the ways of it is a it is a it is it and it talks about the history of it and the different ways it comes from, because many times we have a many people just don't think that black men are intellectual. They just don't want to be intellectual. And we have this notion of ourselves in our own communities. So it's not just black people. I mean, it's not just white people who think this about us. It's black people who think this about us. Often it's black female teachers who think this about young black men or young black teachers, right? In terms of thinking you are just the academics is not enough. Do the sports thing, do the other things, right? Like, and these are the things that he's been studying in terms of the ways in which the perception of us bleeds all the way through culture. And that book was just a transformative read for me, in seeing the depth in which anti-blackness goes and the way in which anti-blackness often gets targeted at black men. And we see the results educationally, but we often don't bluntly deal with the stuff that we know is true, right?
We have a cub in the Black Panther Party I'm extremely proud of, and Baruti can testify to who I'm talking about and what he does. You know, it's Sharif Al-Meki. Sharif is an educator. Sharif is an educator in the Philadelphia school system, but he also has this organization. I've drawn a blank on the name of the organization. They do an annual conference every year that tries to create a pipeline for black men into the classroom. We are less than 1% of educators in public school are black men, and we do not see them hardly at all in the earlier stages, like how we're talking about right now. And that's the crisis that we need to address. So yeah, and I tell my daughter Keisha that, you know, what's left of my life is a mission also to get brothers who are coming back out of our credible messenger family to go all the way with their recovery and their transformation, and to become a part of the healing in their community, not just the peace.
Is it black men convening
healing in the community, right? Was we try and combat this whole thing around this whole mental health thing that we're just learning to talk about right now. Again, black men on the healing side are underrepresented, right? And they need to be integrated in a central way to be the kind of difference that we need to do. Thank you, Kafele, Center for Black Educators, right? He just dropped it in the chat, right?
Okay.
For the development of Black educators, yes. We got to get Sharif back on to talk about that too. He does it every year. Kafele's been involved with him for years. I've done what little I could, you know, as an out of class, some kind of, you know, dude. But the Black Men in Education convening, right on. He's right there, right? That's the kind, you know, those are community spaces that merit our support and that merit being more resourced by resources that we have control over in our community. And I ain't just talking about people who we elect too, you know. We have a class of folks that got some money, right? It's a hip hop talk show. What about all these hip hop stars that have made some money?
Yeah,
right? My little sister, you know, Sister Soldier used before he lost his mind and got himself in some crazy trouble, used to help Daddy P Diddy manage the charity side of his money. Daddy had him putting that money into real stuff on the streets and on the ground, right? He lost his damn mind, unfortunately, and you see the mess he's in. But you know, he's an example of another space of resources that ain't coming back in our community the way it should.
Yeah, you're right. Zaid. It was called Daddy's House. That
right.
That name didn't age well. That name didn't age well. That name did not age well. Wow.
Oh my God! But it was good work, and you know, and a resourced celebrity like that. He ain't the only one, right? We used to have Tamika on the show, right? My son, right? Until Freedom, right? When they went south, voter education and Breonna Taylor, they got a grant from one of our celebrities that really allowed for them to make an impact that they might not have been able to do had they not gotten those resources, right? So so the whole question of us taking responsibility for this and putting our resources where we need them is ultimately our responsibility that we all need to share together.
Yeah. But we gotta, Zaid, I'm just, I think that, with people dying the way that we are, and that conversation of people becoming desensitized, the truth is, man, is that none of us are safe, right, in the city of Newark. None of us, man, because if we talk about them young brothers, who can kill 3 people and then go in the studio and make a rap record, that's real serious, man. And what we've got to do is begin to stop talking and start doing something about it, right? And we've got to be able to reach these children. I'm interested in them children. I'm interested at getting to them kids before they get to the 3rd and 4th grade, right? Because that's where you gotta reach these kids at, man. And like Jonathan said, he had his sister who was giving him pictures, and talking, having a black conversation with him as a child. And some of these kids are not even having that kind of conversation with their own parents. You know why? Because some of these people got grandparents, John, who are 30 years old, right? Imagine you 30 years old and you're a grandparent already. That's just insane. When I was coming up, I remember my grandmother being in her 60s and 70s, man. Right? You got a 30-year-old grandmother. What does she know? She's probably just as strung out as you are. I mean, just absolutely insane, man.
Just a reminder to everybody to subscribe to All Politics Are Local on YouTube.com, to subscribe to All Politics Are Local on YouTube.com. And back to you, Ed, Zaid.
Yeah. And I was also just putting in the chat, I want to lift up Kafele also, because he's not just here regularly, but he also makes use of these platforms where we should, right? You folks need to check him out if you can.
Absolutely.
Every Saturday, 11 a.m. on YouTube. He's right there. Talking to assistant principals, people trying to make a difference, people like Keisha, right? Having these hard conversations about how to move work on the educational front in those places where we are in charge.
Right.
Where we are in charge.
No, absolutely. If you are in education, you need to be listening. Like, even if you're not trying to be assistant principal, even if you're not trying to be an administrator in education, I think that you should be listening to Principal Kafele's broadcast every Saturday, 11 o'clock. I learn a lot from it. As just being a teacher, you learn from people's best practices. You learn from about organization. You learn about the different struggles that different educators have educating our kids within cities all over the country, because his program is national in scope, and he is one of the foremost educators in the country. He has published prolifically. I think that anyone who does not know Principal Kafele in education needs to check out his YouTube page, and they need to check him out as well.
But that's why, Jonathan, I think that, man, we've got to develop some kind of special school, by which, man, we're teaching, children, right? And we're talking to kids and being able to say that. I mean, the whole world has got to be looking at us and say, man, y'all are crazy, man. Black folks, y'all haven't figured this thing out yet. I mean, I heard somebody say, recently, they were talking about, everyone else in this country, how they can come to America and how they can better themselves. Well, I mean, naturally, Jonathan, they don't have the histories that we have, right? And they don't, and we've said this to the mayor before, and there's a sister who wrote a book where she talked about the slavery syndrome, right? You got to remember, man, we've never really dealt with that kind of trauma. We've never dealt with, all of the stuff that have happened to us. And so, most of us are still dealing with, and those of us who are trying to make it, we're really trying to make it on our own. We're trying to figure this thing out, man. And when you say, Jonathan, that, that level of technology that was being played on you as a child, you think about how many other children that stuff is being played on, where them kids are being put in special education that don't need to be there, right? And that breaks your spirit, right? It breaks you to the point where you think you're not smart, where you think you're not intelligent. And when you're dealing with people who don't have love for you, that's difficult for you, man. And I thank God I had teachers and a principal like when I was coming up, Eugene Campbell, that I had teachers like his sisters, right, who were all involved in education when I was a child. But you think about other kids that don't have that, right? You get so, and I'm talking about all of these were Black women that I had coming up in first, second, and third grade. I didn't get a male teacher until I was in the fourth grade, and he was white. And by the time I got to the fourth and fifth grade, it was over, man. I'd begin to lose interest. And that's just real talk, man. And I think that we've got to stop talking about it, and we've got to do something about it. We got the ability to do something in the city of Newark, and we need to do it, man. Because this is not, when that happened with the 14-year-old getting into the shootout with that police, we thought that was horrific. A couple of months later, we hear, and it's not even the end of the year, we had a 16-year-old. We're going to see this again unless we do something about it.
And I think that the bottom line is yes, agreeing with all the things that you're saying. And I think we just need to be even more specific. There are two things that I think are important, and that's to develop an overall culture in the city where people know who they are. And I think that is important in all levels, to be talking about our history, to be understanding what white supremacy is. We have the situation at Global Studies that was really a precursor to a bunch of these like Latinos for Trump, a lot of them embracing the worst aspects of his blatant overt racism and embodying that type of real toxic behavior inside of what they were doing. And you have that, and it had national implications. And many did not realize that the overt white supremacy that was being embraced was going to be targeted against them. And has been naturally, right? Right, because I think that the reason why I think Paul Ortiz's book, and I thought the Newark Public Schools was brilliant for bringing him up, and they literally had a workshop for every history teacher in the city of Newark to hear him speak. They gave out his book to every history teacher in the city of Newark, is because this is stuff that everybody needs to know, and they need to know the way in which white supremacy affects their community as well, and the depth of it, and the history of it, right? And I think
Paul was teaching in Sada too.
Right, yeah, absolutely,
Love
right,
that.
right, absolutely, right. So Paul Ortiz is no joke, right? Like having him in the Newark Public Schools, having him like literally teaching history teachers, being brought by the head of the history department. That is an overt act that is directly trying to address some of this stuff. But I think that it's necessary to both highlight it and normalize it, so this is a normal occurrence within the Newark Public Schools, and the types of history, the types of stuff that they're talking about, and the stuff that got them in trouble in Florida, or at least caused that backlash in Florida, is the stuff that has to be normalized within our own city, so that we can so that it's not abnormal. It's not like this stuff is just you get it everywhere. You don't even have to look for it. It's there, right? So that people have an understanding of what the beauty of blackness, the history of colonialism, the history of where we are, like how the ways in which white supremacy works, and the different ways in which an embrace of blackness and love and those things are fundamental to everybody.
And we should also acknowledge today too. Today is also the birth anniversary of none other than Dr. Carter G. Woodson.
Wow.
Man who dared to institutionalize our history.
One of the most important books I've ever read in my life. The
Miseducation of the Negro.
Of the Negro, right?
Read the last chapter if you ain't got time to read the whole book because you think you busy and important. Read the last chapter at least and get that to somebody.
Yeah, changed my life, man.
And he talks about the consequence of what that black colonized mind looks like and what it will do to perpetuate its colonial, self-hurting condition without knowing who the hell we are. He said that almost 100 years ago.
Right. And Zay, that's what we're seeing now. We're seeing the effects of all. We're seeing the effects of that, right? And that's why we have all of that, and we've got to take the responsibility for that, And I'm telling you, man, it breaks my heart, man, because I understand, man. I get it, man. I'm real clear, right? And when you hear the mayor talk about, what these young people are dealing with, in the level of survival, we don't see it on their level, man. And I think that, because there's a lot of need there, right? And we've got to, there's this old saying that said that each one teach one, right? We've got to be teaching people, right? And we've got to be and I recognize some of us are afraid to have that black talk, right? I remember Minister Farrakhan, saying one time, he was talking about, being able to just change the language to call each other brothers and sisters again, and when that whole conversation about calling each other niggas, and that would go a long way in terms of how we feel about one another and what kind of conversation we could have with one another. But you know what happened? Most of us got so damn educated that we just thought we couldn't talk to each other like that anymore, right? You can't call me brother. You can't call me sister. Oh, I'm not your brother. I'm not your sister, right? And not understanding, like the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us. He said that the reason we call each other brothers and sisters is because he said there was a time when we were brothers and sisters. And we only became divided when we got to the plantation. And white folks split us up. And so we don't even know if we brothers and sisters.
The most important things he wanted to bring us was the whole question of fellowship with each other.
Yeah. And so we've got to settle into, the Bible talks about, what is the preeminent and most important thing? And the Bible calls it love. Love. And so the black man and woman have got to get back to, the hell with loving everybody else. We got to get to loving each other. Right? We got to get back to that. We got to get to loving each other, loving the black man and woman, being able to talk to each other and not fear each other. Right? We in that state now, man. We the question is that if we're walking down the street and we see a bunch of young people, the question is, are we safe walking down that street or are we not? And I would venture to say most of us would say no, we're not safe. Because these kids don't have any knowledge of self, so they're not going to respect no elder. And you see that every day. They don't respect elders. There has to be there has to be this state of emergency, and I think that we've got to act on it, man.
Absolutely, absolutely. Black Panther Party.
That's true.
Yeah, and Black Panther Party said, Black Panther Party had over 60 community survival programs, served the people body and soul, coming from an undying love for the people, right? And of course, they wasn't talking about people on the moon. They were talking about our people in our hoods and our communities, our small ghettos, and all those places where we live at, where we dealing with all these problems. But we're dealing with the hallmarks of oppression.
Yo, man, I'm just, I'm just to the point, man, where because Zaid, I talk to Zaid, I talk to Bashir on a regular, man, and when I talked to him, man, one of the things he was saying was how the kids who are coming here from primarily from Africa, he said they come in here and they going to school and they motivated, right? Our kids are not motivated, man. They're not motivated, and so if they're not motivated, and the people who are teaching them not motivated, and most certainly if those people don't have knowledge of self or don't know anything about themselves, I mean, you got to think about what are they raising, man, and you cannot fault these children for dropping out of school because there's no motivation for them to get up in the morning. I mean, where are they going? What are they going to do? Hang out? They're not paying attention to the teachers. They're not motivated to learn anything. They don't see any opportunities for themselves, right? So when the mayor relates to this place is hard, yeah, it is. And the people who are teaching them, for the most part, are really just trying to get to, they're just trying to get their 20 or 30 years in, get to their pension, and move on, man.
Yeah, and that's not what we need.
Right.
That's not that's not going to breathe the excellence and return us to the excellence from which we sprang. That's not going to do it.
But that's what we have, right? And I'm telling you, we've got to have, and we can't talk about it no more. Right? We just got to say, yo, man, here's what we need to do, and let's put some finances to this thing, because going after granted, there's millions and millions of dollars need to be given to HBCUs. I get it, right? But we need to be giving millions and millions of dollars to, those grammar school situations, man, and trying to reach them babies, man, right? And trying to help turn these kids around. Because I'm telling you, once they get to that teenage stage, these white folks are done with them kids, man. They're done with them.
That's right. And the state is all ready to collect them.
Yeah. And as you said, the prison to pipeline, right? They building these places, man. They've already got this stuff in position.
Yeah, and I think we should do this, and I don't know if we have. I don't know what happened to who was supposed to be our guest tonight. I don't know what happened to Rukia. We were really looking forward to having her, and I just buzzed Professor Khalfani. I hope he can get on too, because we had some real powerful conversations that we were slated to have with our guests this evening, right?
Right. I'm not sure what happened with Rukia either. I know she was in a meeting, but I thought she was going to jump on.
Yeah. And Khalfani just got back from doing some extensive work in Africa, particularly at the 9th Pan-African Congress.
So we just struck out all tonight with our guests. Cancellation.
Kafele gave us a shout out. He appreciates us trying to have this conversation, but we did have a fully lined up program with some guests that we really wanted to be heard. So we're working on that, y'all. We're working on that.
Yep. Yeah, Raquel was going to have a really good end of the year conversation. She wrote a piece in The Nation, and the piece was really about progressive movements or progressive elections when they start, and what are some things to look for, what happens. And that was going to be a wonderfully deep conversation. Hopefully we can reschedule that with her later. It was a letter she wrote in The Nation that was a letter she is here. Great.
Oh, good. Bring it on.
That is excellent. That is
Bring
excellent.
it on.
We were just talking about you.
Land, girl, we miss you.
In The Nation. Welcome. We were just having that talking about the welcome, and we were just talking about the peace in the nation, and a wonderful conversation. We were like, well, hopefully we can reschedule the conversation because we were really looking forward to it. Welcome back to All Politics Are Local. You are a friend of the show. You have been a friend of the show for many years, coming on quite consistently. You just wrote a piece in the Nation, and it was a love letter to New York City from Jackson, Mississippi, and it seemed like it was at the very beginning of a progressive mayoralty. There's hope, there's optimism, but then they come, right? And clearly you're talking about your experience in Jackson, Mississippi, and in government there. Talk to us about, well, first, welcome to the show. Just welcome.
Welcome
back.
And
welcome back. Yes. Always glad to see you and have you back. And then just, jump right into that thoughtful and beautiful piece that you had in the Nation.
Thank you so much. It's good to be back on. Sorry, my eyes are hurting a little bit. I've been staring at a screen all day. We have a number of end of the year things we're trying to achieve here. So thanks for having me. It's good to see you, good brothers, again. It's been a little bit of a while. But yeah, thank you. And I'm glad that y'all read the letter. I had the opportunity to co-author that with Makani Timba, who is
trying to get Makani on here too, by the way.
Yes.
We've been having our own conversation. Yes. She knows his parents.
And just grateful to always do work with her and to be in community with her, both of us here in Jackson. We wrote the letter because we felt the excitement. We too were excited regarding the win, the mayoral win in New York with Mandani. And we know what it feels like to have that joy. You all know what it feels like in Newark to experience that. And then we all know what it feels like, the aftermath of it all. And it's a slow build, right? The aftermath of the attempts to destroy what you're attempting to build comes slowly, but consistently. And so we offered it as a opportunity to just share our excitement, but to also offer some very broad lessons learned, so that hopefully we can help to encourage a thought process that moves people into an offensive stance where they can protect, right, the work, the wins, and mitigate the challenges that come. And so that's why we wrote it.
Mm-hmm. What are some of those? What are more specifically? What are those challenges? You're trying to do something positive. Mm-hmm. You are trying to do something that many people are dead set against. You use the word socialism, mm-hmm. and democratic socialism. Your brother did not shy away from that. You don't shy away from that in what you're talking about. What does that mean practically? And what did you find that meant practically?
Yeah, I mean, what that meant for us practically, and continues to mean even without us, without my brother holding office. And to be clear, I never held office. I always was working within the community to really realize an opportunity for community members to be a part of government, to engage in what we call co-governance, where we understand our own self-determination and that we are not just recipients of what the government gives, but we are contributors and developers of what government should be and what policies are necessary for our well-being. And so we are developers, we're contributors to that. And so helping to realize that through our People's Assembly process. And so, you know, looking at what that means in terms of like the attacks and the challenges, when we're trying to building is as simple as making sure roads are paved and people can drive down roads and get to work and get to school without bursting their tire or cracking their rim and then having to pay hundreds of dollars just to get that fixed in order to go to work after they missed a day of work because they couldn't get there in the first place. So now folks who are living paycheck to paycheck are experiencing the financial burden of broken roads. It's fixing those roads so our people no longer have to carry the burdens of those broken roads that cause them to lose income, that cause additional stress on their life. We're talking about the challenge that came with that. The first challenge that came with that came during my father's administration, when the people of Jackson voted by 99% of the population to tax themselves an additional 1%. And for that money to actually go towards the paving of roads to prevent additional potholes. Soon as the people passed that, the state government came and said, oh, you can't tax yourself. And what they did to get around that, the state then created a commission which the current mayor, Horn, the current mayor now, was a part of the development of this legislation that snatched the money away from the people of Jackson and put it into a committee of folks legislators that don't live in Jackson, that are not from Jackson. And so state legislators that are not from here make decisions around how the 1% that Jacksonians decided to tax themselves to fix their road, how that money is spent.
Wow.
And so that's an example of how they try to attack us.
Wow.
Another attack is as soon as my brother took office in 2017, the state Board of Education tried to take over the school district of Jackson. We've seen this happen across the nation, right? You've seen school districts taken in predominantly Black areas and predominantly poor areas. They attempted to take the school district. Parents, city council folks, advocates, the mayor's office, all created a strong coalition called Our JPS, and we were able to fight against the state takeover. My brother, along with his administration, met with the governor and was able to get the governor at that time, Phil Bryant, to intervene and prevent the state legislators and state Board of Education from taking over Jackson Public School District by creating what we called using some of their tactics to create a commission that allowed the mayor to appoint people to a board that helped to oversee school district activities for a period of time, a short period of time. So we were able to prevent the state from taking over the school district. Jackson Public Schools can maintain their own school district, and since that time has increased its rating and its academic score significantly over the past.
Newark was taken over in the 1990s, and that lasted for 20 years because the state didn't want to give it back. When we passed all the markers for the state to give it back, they changed the markers again. Until finally we got it back in 2018. After a series of protests, over 2,000 kids shut down the highway leading to Newark Airport. And a series of other things happened until Mayor Baraka was finally able to work with Republican Governor Chris Christie to get control of the state back. So that once they took it, they would have never given it back. and they would not have increased the quality of education. They would have just funneled the money to themselves. Is that still going on? Like
Can't get to the water
the
yet.
state
Can't
is
get to the water question yet.
right, because is yes, that, and are they trying to go after the water still?
Oh, yes. You know, they, you know, our water battles have been, and our water issues have been in existence since I was a child. The state has been neglectful in caring for Jackson's water for decades. And I mean, and it really started in the 70s when the city began to become more Black. And you saw a significant white flight out of the city into the suburban areas surrounding Jackson. And so since the 70s, since like 70, 72, the state has neglected to contribute any funding, any real funding towards repairing Jackson's water infrastructure. Jackson's water plant is over, main water plant is over 100 years old. The second water plant is in need of significant repair and upgrading as well. And so what we have seen is that despite every mayor, right? And it even goes back to the last white mayor of Jackson that came in that predated Harvey Johnson, who became mayor in the mid 90s. And so what we see is a state that does not take seriously water, infrastructure, and people's health. And so Jackson and other areas, because this is, believe it or not, this is not just a Jackson issue. It's a Jackson and a poor county issue. If you are in a poor county or in a rural community that is not economically viable, you will see that they're suffering the same water crisis that we're suffering. It hit Jackson worse because Jackson has one of the largest water infrastructures. And when the state was receiving money from the federal government every single year that was supposed to go to Jackson, that the federal government said was allocated for Jackson, the state was not giving that money to Jackson, and instead giving that money to other areas, including suburban areas that surround Jackson that are predominantly white and predominantly economically more viable and stable. And so what we saw is an intentional neglect and an intentional divestment from Jackson around our water infrastructure, which led to us having several instances where we were without water. The first being in 2021, I mean, not the first, but one of the biggest occurring in 2021 when we experienced the winter freeze, where the water pipes froze and then burst, right? And our water tanks were frozen, and as a result, cracks formed in them, and so water seeped out of those tanks, and so we had a water pressure where over 80% of the city was without water. And so we saw that in 2021. The governor, then Governor Tate Reeves, did not respond to that crisis until 3 weeks after we had been without water. Wow. After community groups and the mayor's office had already been going out into community, getting people water, and we were all impacted. Whether you had money or no money, everybody was impacted. And so
this is in an American city, in the New South.
Yep.
Baby, sound like one of them more poor countries somewhere across the water.
No water, and I can't
this stuff up. Whoa!
The horror stories. I mean, it's a lot, and I mean, you never realize how privileged you are to have something as simple as water until you don't have it. Right. When you can't brush your teeth, when you can't take a shower, and days and days and days go by, when you gotta go to the store to find bottled water, right? In order just to cook your food, in order just to wash your food, when you got little babies and you got folks living with kidney problems and folks living with all of these chronic illnesses and they can't care for themselves. Like, you just understand how significant something as simple as clean water is, right? So we experienced that, and then this continues. The city, despite the city's efforts to constantly repair a broken system with no money from the state, little to no money from the state, and then increasing fines from the EPA, right? I want to be clear, right? So the city didn't have money to fix the water problem and was putting Band-Aids on it as much as it could, wasn't getting money from the state. And then the federal government, instead of coming in and providing funding to help fix the problem, fined the city for
And
its
this was under
inability.
the Biden administration.
This was under the Biden administration. Yep. And so what was able to eventually happen through the advocacy of my brother, through the advocacy of many groups. I mean, People's Advocacy Institute, Mississippi Poor People's Campaign, Southern Poverty Law. I mean, we had a huge coalition that every day we went out, and every Monday we held a protest in front of the governor's mansion. And I mean, a massive protest, demanding that we receive funding to fix our water infrastructure. What that ended up doing is getting us national attention, to where the federal government ended up sending $800 million to Jackson to fix our water infrastructure issue. Mind you, it is over $1 billion issue, but they sent $800,000 directly. They bypassed the state and sent it directly to Jackson. That was directly a result of my brother's direct advocacy to the Biden administration, and to the support of, believe it or not, Republican Congressman Wicker, Senator Wicker, Roger Wicker. It was Roger Wicker. And so we were able to get that money. Now, what happened is that really caused folks to be mad, right? On the state level. And the state legislators the governor had already had contracts signed and ready to go, thinking that money was going to come to him. He already had people identified, contractors identified, that he was going to pay using that money. And so when it bypassed the state and went directly to the city, it caused significant embarrassment. And so the attacks on my brother and on the city of Jackson and on Black leadership increased significantly. Let
me slow that down just a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I heard about this. I believe you were on the show around the time that happened, and it was revolutionary at the time, because most of the time, money, block grants, goes to states. States determine how it's spent. The southern states had, as you were talking about, this horrible, horrible practice of just taking that money and not giving it to the predominantly Black and brown cities. Mm-hmm. What you did by bypassing that power, getting that money going directly there, was a revolutionary act. Mm-hmm. That money going directly to Jackson. It is the type of thing that progressives talk about needing, doing, getting money directly there, so you, the people of Jackson, can determine who are the contractors. You can determine who is fixing stuff, what millionaires are being created based on the infrastructure things that are created. Mm-hmm. That's something, and so that goes to what you were saying, and you can continue from there. Mm-hmm. They got mad.
They got mad. And so, they got mad and they got more aggressive with their attacks. And so while that money was allocated to come to Jackson, and eventually did come to Jackson, it was, the EPA said that we either had to get an interim third-party manager over the water, or an outside person, interim third-party manager, or the state had to take over the water. And so the city administration said, well, we don't want the state to take over the water because that'll put us in a worse situation.
Right.
So we'll go with the third party, the interim third party manager.
And what was the justification of this at the federal level? Like, why a third party manager? Why is that demanded? And that's not necessarily true of any other executive. You're giving it to the city government. Why can't the city government do what other city governments do? What was the even justification for that?
The justification that they provided was that there had been too many years of fines around not providing safe drinking water. Well, when you fine in a place that doesn't have the money to fix the infrastructure, and the state is not providing the funding as it should be, then of course you're going to have issues where you're asking a broke city to fix a huge problem,
Long-standing huge problem,
long-standing, decades long-standing huge problem with no money, right? You asking us to create a miracle, right? You asking us to do a miracle. And so, but we miracle workers, right? So for years, they have been at least putting a Band-Aid on the problem so that we had water, right? We at least had water to bathe in, we couldn't drink the water. I have never been able to drink the water in Jackson unless there's filters. I've never been able to drink the water in Jackson. And I've lived here a majority of my life. Right. And so, so basically it's saying that they don't believe Black leadership in this city has the capacity to actually manage and correct the problem. And so they want to appoint a interim third party manager. Why? Wow. Why do you think that Black leaders can't do that? If we've been able to maintain a water system with little to no resources for decades, why would you think we can't actually maintain it when we actually have money to improve the situation? We've been working through it without money. So I think it goes back to like people's belief that Black people can't lead, right? That we don't know how, that we're not smart enough, that we're not experienced enough, that we don't have the genius to solve our own problems. So they bring in this white guy to come in, and he ends up working with the state. And so right now what we're experiencing is the first time in the past 8 years that water billing payments have been at an all-time low. It's the first time in 8 years under this new administration and under this interim third-party manager that people's bills have significantly across the board increased to astronomical rates. It's the first time that we've had a water department try to increase our water rates while not fixing a billing issue. People are getting bills in amounts of $1,500, $15,000, $5,000. I'm talking about water bills. I mean, it is absurd, right? People's water getting cut off left and right. If you want to pay attention to what happened in Detroit, you'll see that it is similarly something that's happening right now in Jackson.
And by Detroit, you're talking about the ways in which people are put out of society because their water's cut off. And when your water's cut off, then it is worse than having a felony record, because you can't do anything without water. You can't bathe. You can't, literally they're cutting off in Detroit, they were cutting off people's water all over the city. And you had entire populations of people who did not have access to water because they were jacking up the rate so much. And in Detroit, they privatized the water system.
Yep.
And because they privatized the water system, so they're attempting to privatize the water in Jackson, which will lead to continuing problems of people, because once it's privatized, they ain't working for the people of the city.
That's right. And they're not right now.
That water, right. They're selling it off to the highest bidder.
Yeah.
So in Jackson right now,
the water is basically privatized. The water is under a corporation called Jackson Water. It is no longer under the city. The interim third party manager manages the water under a new entity called Jackson Water. It is not run by the city. And he's
not accountable. Because I think that the problem there is that he was not even accountable. He was a third party manager, was not accountable to the city.
That's right. Yeah. And so
what's the check? Was there any check based on that? Was it just you have to give it to a third party manager?
So there's a Judge Wingate, that was appointed, federal judge appointed to oversee the third party managers' operations of the water system. And Reagan appointee, what we've seen is throughout the entire last few years of my brother's administration, that judge working with the third party manager against the city and against residents of the city, if I can be honest. And what we see now that there's a new mayor is that the judge is now beginning to see that this wasn't a problem of the mayor, of the prior mayor. This was a problem, period, of the third party manager. And so the judge, for the first time in the last couple of weeks, just issued an order preventing Jackson Water from raising water rates again, and has asked for more transparency in terms of what is actually happening, what the Jackson Water is actually fixing, and what the billing issues are. This is the first time that we've seen that happen, though we have been fighting for this for at least 2 years now with the judge. Yeah.
It's interesting. I'm a debate coach in Newark, and we were doing research for a topic on prison voting. People in prison should have the right to vote. We were doing research on that, and we were doing research on disenfranchisement. And one of the things we realized is that Mississippi has the largest percentage of Black people in the country of any state. Like it has like close to 30% of all people in
Close to 40%.
Mississippi
Yeah.
are African American, right?
Mhm.
And is there what? And I was shocked, and I'm realizing that it's Mississippi, and then it's Louisiana,
Mhm.
and these are like deep, deep, deep red states.
Mhm.
Is there a movement in Mississippi to do what was done in Georgia, to make it purple, to make it like to put some
Absolutely.
fear in these legislators? What is going on
Yeah.
that level, and what are the impediments? Because it seems like what you're talking about is the only way it's going to stop is if they're forced to stop.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's been a movement. Mississippi was part of the reason, through the genius of Fannie Lou Hamer and Medgar Evers and so many more Mississippians, were part of the big reason why we had the Voting Rights Act, right? Like, and so it's always been a movement here around recognizing our electoral right as a form of power to achieve more self-determination and governing power in the state as Black people. And so there is a strong coalition of Black and progressive organizations and individuals that come together to mobilize people to the polls. What we see is a issue, especially for state races, is that our redistricting has absolutely played a part in preventing us from having more statewide Black elected officials. The other thing is that voter disenfranchisement, right? Like, we are a state that has one of the highest percents of Black people in a state, but we're also the largest incarcerator in the world, right? And the majority of folks
You mean
behind
Mississippi? In Mississippi itself?
Yes, in Mississippi. In Mississippi itself, we incarcerate more people than anywhere else in the world, right? And so that, and so in the majority of those people that are incarcerated are Black folks, are Black and brown folks, Black and or indigenous folks. And I think folks don't realize is that we have a lot of immigrants, specifically Latino immigrants from Central America, that are also in Mississippi. And many of the detention centers are on the Mississippi and Louisiana border, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas border. So we're seeing an increase in that as well. And so, incarceration is big money here, but it's also a big disenfranchisement tool here. And so there are 23 laws that prevent people in Mississippi who have ever been incarcerated from voting again. So there are 23 felonies that bar you from voting ever again in your life. And so we have a big disenfranchisement issue here as well.
Is there a federal? Do you think that next time, or if current administration goes out, the Democrats get another shot at it, is there a move for a federal voting rights act that would ban disenfranchisement. Like you can't disenfranchise voters.
Oh,
Voters vote. You can't disenfranchise them. Do you
mm.
think that a law that passes that forbids the disenfranchisement of voters, especially as it's been used in Mississippi and Louisiana, would that be a game changer
Oh,
in
absolutely.
the state? And
Absolutely.
what do you imagine would happen if that happened?
Well, first of all, we've already come close with all of the challenges, right? All of the challenges that they bring up against us, right? Y'all know this everywhere that you are. Every time they try to put something against us to try to prevent us from gaining power, we get closer and closer to gaining that power. So from the two campaigns that Mike Espy led for state senator against Cindy Hyde Smith, Republican Cindy Hyde Smith, what we saw is that each time he got closer and closer to winning. The last time, the first time he was just a few percentage points off from beating her, right? So let's be clear. We get closer and closer to purple every time there's an election. And so that's one. If we see the law changed, there will be at least, right? We count about at least 200,000 Mississippians that regain their right to vote.
Wow, 200,000?
Mm-hmm. That will regain their right to vote.
So in Mississippi, 200,000 people have been disenfranchised. Mississippi ain't a big state. I mean, it's the highest percentage of Black people in the country, but it's not
Not
the
huge.
highest number because it's not a huge state.
And our population has been decreasing a little bit each year as people move out of Mississippi. But yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that means that if a federal law ever passes that forbids the disenfranchisement of voters,
Mm-hmm.
you are talking about sweeping change all over the South.
Absolutely. And the other thing is, we were really close in 2020. I just want y'all to be clear. It's not Mississippians, right, that are preventing progressive change in Mississippi. In 2020, when Mississippians had the ballot initiative, the right to actually vote for the policies they believe in, we passed medical marijuana by 72% of all Mississippians voted for the passage of medical marijuana. When 2020, we passed the change of the state flag by over 70% of Mississippians voted to change the state flag. And we were the next year, we were on track to pass Medicare expansion. We were on track, Medicaid expansion. We were on track to pass a law to prevent predatory lending. We were on track to pass these things, and we were on track to challenge the state's attempt to ban abortion, right? What we saw after 2020, after the passage of the change of the state flag and after the passage of medical marijuana by the majority of Mississippians, the state legislator, the governor and the state legislator attempted to change the law and successfully changed the law, preventing citizens to present ballot initiatives and then to vote on them. And so since 2020, we have been unable to present a ballot initiative and vote on it. In addition to that, every single legislative session, it is brought up to a bill to attempt to prevent us from, if we ever gained the right back to pass law through ballot initiative, that we would not be able to do so as it relates to key issues such as Medicaid expansion, predatory lending, and abortion. Ain't that something?
Wow.
So
look at where we at nationally now. Look at that.
And look at where we at nationally. We've been dealing with this literally since 2017. All of the things we see happening nationally, we've been dealing with way before 2017. I mean, it goes back to 2013, right? I can go back to 2013, where we saw this trend beginning to happen.
Now, going back to the original essay, when it was sobering, because you were like, all right, party now. You know, we wish you luck, wish you well, but they're going to come for you. Right? What happens and what advice do you give for when they come for you? Because it's kind of like, you know, For anyone who's like a science fiction geek, and there are a lot of us who are, it's kind of like you got Star Wars, you win, yay, right? And then you got the
Mhm.
Empire Strikes Back,
Yeah.
right? And they strike back. Um, what? How do you get that next wind wave? And where are you? Where are we at right now in Jackson? Right? Because
Mhm.
there's a lot of that there's a lot of vehemence from the federal government, the attacks on your brother, in terms of the federal attacks,
Mhm.
the ways in which even within our own communities they get people who they want to do the things they want, the ways in which even your friends are forcing you to get the the person who's an oversight
Mhm.
for water and issues. It seems like you make two step forwards, one step back, but you're not hopeless.
Mhm. Yeah.
Why not? What's going
Can't be
on?
hopeless. You can't be hopeless in this. We can't be hopeless in this work. I mean, to be hopeless is to give up and to just concede to live in a miserable life, and I refuse to allow my people to live in misery. Right. One of the biggest things, myself or my people, let me be clear. One of the biggest hurts or pieces of grief that we, and in particular I experience as a result of the attacks and the way that the state legislature and the federal government has been able to sway community, right? Because we have to remember their tactics are divisive. Their tactics spread lies and disinformation. So there's a lot of misinformation around what was achieved by my brother's administration, around the goals. And then they try to attack your character.
Mm.
And it's that character assassination that I think for many folks in Jackson hit the hardest, right? Because people have hope because they believe in the person oftentimes, whether they should or not, but they believe in the person. And they believe in the goodness of that person and the goodness of that person to achieve the goals that they set out to achieve. And at the very least, they just believe in the goodness of that person to stand on morals and to always act with moral fortitude. And so what has really caused me the most grief is that people have lost hope in each other and in Black leadership because they have been bombarded with propaganda that tells them that they can't trust Black leadership. That Black leadership, even when they show you that they've done good, they're not really doing good behind the scenes. They're trying to swindle or get something out. And so it's that disinformation, it's those lies. And you say, well, how can people believe this when they see you doing good things? When for 4 years, a state and opposing forces are spreading lies via communication, right? Through bots. We like AI bots are real, y'all. We experienced it over the last 5 years through and bots that people think are real. Creating pages of people that real people, but their page ain't even their real page. It's not them at all, right?
Wow.
And just constant, like, while we're here on media, racist ring forces are on media too, and they're getting paid. They're getting paid to spread lies and propaganda. And our people over a period of time began to believe it. And especially those people who wanted to believe that we can't be that good in the first place. It's easier to believe. And we have to remember that we also are overcoming a history, a DNA that has come into our DNA of questioning ourselves as well, right? Questioning our abilities, right? Because on the slave plantation, we were taught to question our abilities. And so we have to fight against that. We have to fight against that. And so, the state of Jackson right now is that we are under Black leadership that is conservative. that is backed by Republican dollars and Republican support, and that is willing to give up this city to the state and regional authority. That's where we are in Jackson right now. And we're here because people were, had they not filed federal charges against my brother, we wouldn't be in this situation in the first place.
Exactly.
Right.
That was the ultimate rules.
Right.
Ultimate rules.
And it's interesting because, like, even looking at, I know you can't talk about it, but even looking at the case, it's convoluted, right? Like, it's so convoluted that I believe that it is meant for him to be acquitted, but the damage has already been done. I do not think that there's going to be a conviction off of this. I think the case is so convoluted, the judge couldn't understand it. The judge is like, oh, there's a lot of facts and all. It's just so, there's just so much evidence that came from disclosure. Just as reading stuff that people have said about the case, reading stuff the judge has said about the case. It's like, if it's something as simple as bribery, then that's not complicated. But this one is complicated. And this one is like disclosure after disclosure. This one is just being bogged down. And you're like, this isn't really to get a conviction. COINTELPRO wrote about this. They talked about how they bring cases, and they bring cases because the case, it's not about winning the case. It's about bringing the case, doing the damage, making people unemployed, right? Making people, like what they did to Assata Shakur, right? Like what they did to Black Panthers. It's about bringing the case to create frustration and also to create division. And in this case, to do a devastating job of character assassination, where many people in the community will doubt him for a long time, even if he is acquitted, even if he beats all the charges, which I believe that will happen, because I believe the case in and of itself just seems like a nightmarish, convoluted prosecutors bringing it because they feel they have to, because they feel that it was that your brother was making certain levels of progress. Your brother was galvanizing people in ways that, especially in Mississippi, are particularly threatened to a power structure, because it seems like with all the people that you have, if the community is united behind leadership that is for them, that Mississippi is just this close to a dam breaking and power flipping in the state. And once it flips once, they ain't getting it back, because the way in which they have it is unfair. Like, they are literally creating laws that exclude people. Once you actually just include people.
That's right. That's right. Yep. That's it. You said it. You said it.
That's the whole reason, Jonathan, why you've got to destroy Lumumba, and you've got to destroy the legacy.
Yep.
Right.
So it is that in of itself. The other piece is that let's make sure that if we do that, we make sure that Rukia never gets an opportunity to run.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. That she never gets an opportunity to organize in a way that she is a champion at and become an elected official. Right. That's the goal. The other piece is the amount of evidence that these people have somehow collected, right, in this made up case is incredible.
But let me be clear, because they'll say one thing in the news and say like, oh, there's all this evidence brought up, but the reality is only 10% of discovery even relates to my brother at all, right? So I mean, it's all about the narrative. It's as y'all say it's the story that they want to tell, right? It's and so even the indictment itself is about the story they want to tell, as opposed to the true story. And they are trying. I mean, they are trying to discredit the Lumumba name. So whether it's my brother or me, even my father, we see murals being painted over. In city parks, to murals that were of my father, that allegedly are going to be repainted. We ain't seen it be repainted yet, and it's been several months.
Wow.
And so, it is an attempt to discredit our family name, our legacy, and the belief in bold Black leadership that is progressive and for all people.
I've always thought the most powerful thing that you've done is when you're organizing people's assemblies. You're organizing, like you are. It seems to me that at heart you are a grassroots organizer. You were chief of staff. You are definitely a shrewd political operator, right? Well, like I'm in terms of credit, give credit where credit is due, right? Like, but you are someone who knows how to organize and galvanize people. I think that ultimately that's where Mississippi's going to flip and change on the
Yeah.
work that I think the most dangerous work you are doing is the work where you are doing grassroots, getting people together, getting people to talk, and the education that you were doing at a grassroots level that is growing and growing and growing. And I'm
Mhm.
always going to be like, you need to, if you're not running, I hope that you are getting other people to run and that you are just getting like different people to grow and not give up and just keep pushing. So it's closer and closer at a statewide level. Because if Mississippi does what Mississippi is supposed to do, I honestly think the entire nation will change from the earthquake.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you got it clear. You've been paying attention well. We ready. We ready. And Mississippians are ready. We're some resilient people and smart and resourceful. And so the opportunity comes, we're gonna take it. Because every time we're without the opportunity, we pushing our way forward. And so when it comes, we're gonna take it. It's gonna be amazing. And I appreciate y'all having me on today.
All right. But and so what we always ask the
Yeah, but
question.
hold on.
We're not trying to get rid of you. We still got time. We're not trying. If you got to go, that's fine.
I
But
do have
we're
to
not
go.
trying.
Our people
But
Okay.
are
Jonathan,
waiting.
Jonathan, before she leave, we've definitely got to ask how is her brother doing? How's the family? How's everybody doing? Right? We would be remiss if we didn't ask that question about our brother. How's he holding up?
He's, holding strong. He's holding strong. But he needs all the prayers and all the support. He's facing 70 years. This is
Right.
no small thing. And we don't take these attacks lightly. We don't take any charge lightly. We fight because our lives do depend on it. His life depends on it. His family, his girls are doing well. His wife is doing well. She's a brilliant professor and author, and she's continuing to just blossom and grow and just do the amazing thing that she does. We're so grateful for her and all that she does. And so he's holding strong. He's holding strong, but he needs your love. He needs your prayer. His family needs your love and your prayers and your support. Reach out, send them a happy little note.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
We would definitely make that our business to do that, and definitely send him, a strong Black power from us. That we ride with him, but we ride with all of the Lumumbas, right? And we ride that until the wheels come off. And then even when the wheels,
Some of us been riding a long time.
Long time.
Mm-hmm.
You done seen the attacks against our family several times. Yes.
Right. Right. And this is the latest in a long line of attacks. So we we are ending on a note of hope, and I appreciate that. And we want you back here more often. And because your analysis is always amazing, excellent. We got to know what's going on in Mississippi. We got to know what's going on. We have activists from Chicago. We got to know what's going on in all these different places because I think they want us to think that we're separated. They want us to think that the situations are isolated. But they're coming after our congresswoman in Newark, and they're coming up after her on these crazy charges and charging her with assault. She's facing 20 years.
She didn't do nothing. We saw the videos. Yeah.
Right. And so
there to support her too.
Yep. And so you've got our support. We want to get you back on here. We're gonna keep talking about what's going on in Mississippi.
Stay strong, Rukia. Stay strong. We love you.
Love y'all
Absolutely.
too.
Absolutely.
All right.
Love you
Free
much.
the land.
Free the land.
Take care. All right. So we
remember they were babies, man. Because I go back with their father.
Wow.
Oh yeah. Long before he became Mayor Chokwe Lumumba. He was a leading champion of what we call New African independence and the founder of both the New African People's Organization and what we now call the Malcolm X Grassroots Movement Network. All that stuff is almost 50 years in the wind now.
And even though it's 50 years in the wind, it's not unrelated to what's going on right now.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I 100% believe that This is just they were making too much progress in Mississippi. They were threatening them too
The
much.
fact that they made that
And
at all. When
right.
Chocolate, I'm talking about Daddy now, first decided to make that move, most of us who come from, movement background with him, we thought he was nuts.
hmm
But
Oh,
he
when the
was
father
serious.
ran for mayor. Right. When the father ran for mayor.
Because they're originally from Detroit.
Right.
Okay. When they
And then
went
went to New
south,
York. Right.
and he said, "You really, because the organization, were having armed battles with state forces and racist forces in Mississippi. We never thought we would get to a space where they could actually run for office and run things. And Chokwe Daddy now, his organization, they were able to transcend all of that and
hmm
set the die for Chokwe Antar to come in behind him. Rukia is an incredible organizer. She's the organizer out of the children,
Right.
right?
She's an incredible grassroots organizer.
Incredible organizer. What they did. We're looking at the hostility that took Chokwe Antar out of office, but the hostility that they had to transcend going in.
hmm
The fact that they did that far and did that well is incredible.
Yes.
It's
And
incredible.
I think that they are not far from coming back. As in, when you look at the demographics of Mississippi, when you look at the demographics of Louisiana, you understand that there's some levels of like some we should not have been surprised by the Trump administration and what they were able to stir up because it wasn't far under the surface. Because in all these southern states, the way in which they keep power is through vehement, violent, vile white supremacy.
Mhm.
You got 40%, you got close to a 40% black population in Mississippi, and they're red all over, and there's no way that they can break that state. That's because they're doing all kinds of crazy stuff at the state in order to deal with voter disenfranchisement. That's because they are literally locking up black folks left and right for crazy stuff so that they can maintain power. There's this levels of violence, right? They're talking about the little bureaucratic violence. They're talking about being able to control their own water supply, and they have to fight to get money to go to Jackson from the state, and then the federal government turned the back on them and like, no, 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 no. Well, you're gonna have to have this third party, and you can't control the money. That's crazy, right? That's
But
crazy levels of disenfranchisement that's going on, and we all know what it is. We all know they're like, oh, black leadership can't. They were doing that with our school system in Newark. They were
absolutely.
like, they were
Yeah,
like,
that was
you blacks, you
that's
can't
segregation.
control that much money.
That's what segregation looks like.
Right. You can't control your own money. You can't control your own destiny. And they were only doing that in these populated black areas. They were doing that. That's what happened in Flint when they controlled their water supply. You're talking about the state managers that were trying to do that stuff in Detroit when they pushed for the privatization of the water supply, which they're doing all over the country. And
But
what's worse now with the AI data centers coming up, they're putting these data centers in predominantly black areas so that they take the local water supply and contaminate the local water supply in terms of data centers. Like these are bureaucratic things that they're doing with the push of a pen that are actually hurting black communities all over the country. And I think that it is only a matter of time, especially in these red states that have such a large percent, like 30 something to close to 40% black population in Mississippi. This and Louisiana is not far behind.
mhm,
And those are some red behind states. The reason why they remain red is because of voter disenfranchisement.
that's
It
right.
is because they're playing games with the way in which people can't vote, right? Like they are
Gerrymandering and mass incarceration, both
right.
ends of the spectrum.
Right. Incarceration and voter disenfranchisement go hand in hand. And one probably for the other. Because if you don't have voter disenfranchisement, you have a different state. You have a different power structure. Right now, there's like this slave that master they want the state wants this master slave relationship where you don't control your water, you don't control the decisions you make, you don't control who's spending it. She was talking about the governor already had contracts for the money and got embarrassed because the money had to go to Jackson. They had to stop that because if the money goes to Jackson, then what can Jackson do? Jackson can start creating millionaires. Jackson could start giving contracts to people who are within the community and start building up black businesses and start dealing with some levels and rates of poverty within black communities and do similar things to what Ras Baraka did in Newark, where there were black millionaires created based on fixing pipes, etc., for water, right? That people became contractors, people became people who were fixing the water supply, and many of those were local businesses and people who got the contracts and got the ability to start those businesses based directly on citywide government intervention. It's part of the reason why I said at the very beginning, there are things that are going on in Newark that are very positive from the bottom up. And we have to change our narratives to be able to highlight those things that are going on that are good, because I think that is another form of white supremacy where we only think that things are so horrible and have not improved or changed. The reason why we can't say our school system is a high performing district, even though the state of New Jersey and the Department of Education and the state of New Jersey has declared Newark is a high performing district, because there are tangible things that have been improved from test scores for the different schools to attendance for the different schools. But we can't even say that, right? We can't even say that as a community because we're so pushed in white supremacy that we think that, oh, we need charter schools to save us. We need the charter schools to say we need more charter schools, because we can't, like, even in the New Jersey governor's race, they were talking about Newark but not understanding what was going on in Newark. They were talking about the problems with education, but no one talked about the improvement made in education. What went on so that the attendance rates went up drastically? What went on so that the test scores in that different schools across the board significantly went up? What went on, right? No one talks about it because no one wants to talk about it. They rather talk about like what's going on. They rather focus on the things that we still have to improve, which we need to do too, right? We got to focus on the things we have to improve. We got to focus on the things that we have to the people and schools and places that fall through the cracks. We got to focus on those, but we got to also make sure that we are saying yes. Violent crime has gone to an all-time low in the city of Newark. Doesn't mean people have not fallen through the cracks. Does not mean we don't have violent shootings. Does not mean we don't have a problems that we have to deal with when people can take shots on Chancellor Avenue and go and make a song about it, right? Like, doesn't mean those things don't have to be dealt with, but we got to tell the whole story, and I think that whole story is important. Hey, DJ Rhino, you are right on time, my brother. You
wonder
are.
what you're gonna say.
It is DJ Rhino in the state of hip hop.
Ride.
How you doing, man? It's been a really long time since we've seen each other, brother, man.
Yeah, y'all.
We can hear you a little bit. We heard you, and then you jumped back out.
You muted yourself.
Now we can't hear you at all. Wait, your mute mic is off. No, your mic is on. Say something.
Okay.
There you
Good.
go.
There you go. Yeah, you're great.
What's going on, y'all?
Not much, man. It's been a long time, man. I'm gonna give you a hug.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I wanted to I know, we in the last 5 minutes, man, but I had
right,
to
and
jump
you wanted
on.
to talk about Nas and DJ Premier, right? That's what you're gonna talk about.
I had to.
We're gonna talk about
You know,
Nas and DJ Premier? Is that what you were gonna talk about?
I had to. I had to, man. I had to get on and talk about. Yeah, I had to get on and talk about Nas and Primo. We've been waiting for this album for years. I remember when my brother Tane One was still alive, when he was living on Winans in Newark. It was like, the cusp of Newark and Hillside, and we'd be in his basement. And I remember it was one of those producer magazines that had a picture of Nas and Primo on there. And this was years ago, man, years ago. And they were talking about doing an album. And ever since, we were waiting like, all right, well, when's this album coming? When's it coming? And we never heard anything. And so finally, after all of these years, man, we finally got the album from Nas and DJ Premier. It's called Light Years. And it's getting a lot of feedback, man. A lot of feedback. It's gone viral. Just like when De La's album recently dropped, it went viral. You know what I mean? Everybody's talking about it. And it's the same thing with Nas, man. Nas and Primo, they did it up, man. And Nas, everybody's saying how Nas pretty much he's lyrically Nas is bringing it. You know what I'm saying? They talking about Nas is bringing it fully on this album. There's a lot of mixed views on some of the production. Some people are saying, you know, they wanted some harder hitting beats from DJ Premier. They said some of them were cool, but they didn't like all of the beats or whatever. But it's still, look, man, it's a solid album still, man. You know, like I said, we've been waiting for this for so long. One of the songs that dropped, one of the early songs that dropped from the album is a song called Writers, which is a song that is dedicated to graffiti artists. And that made so much noise because Nas took it upon himself to shout out a lot of the classic pioneer graffiti writers on this song. He even shouted out Tane One. He shouted out my brother Tane One on these. Yeah, he shouted out my man Risk.
I heard that.
Yeah, he shouted out Risk. He shouted out Cool's Fear. He shouted out a bunch of people, man. You know, folks that I know personally, and then just mad writers across the board. And I mean, you can see on social media how many writers were so excited, and then you know they posted up, "Yo, Nas shouted me out on this record, on this song." It's crazy. It's just crazy the effect that it took. You know what I mean? How many writers were just like so fanned out that Nas shouted them out on his song. You know what I mean? These are cats probably who would have never got any shout outs from anywhere. You know what I'm saying? Because you know, graffiti writers, man, that's like the hidden element right now of hip hop. You know what I mean? And nobody talks about the writers like individually. You know what I mean? And Nas took it upon himself to shout out all of these writers, man, for eras and decades of doing graffiti. And it just made so much noise, man. And it was so hip hop, and it was it was crazy. And then he has another song on the album called Bouquet, which he's shouting out all of the female MCs from Pioneer days all the way up to now, Lotto and Megan and Cardi. And they have been, some of them have been fanning out like, yo, Nas shouted me out on his album. I know this sister 3D Nati, she's from New Orleans, and she got shouted out, and she posted something on Instagram where she took one of the beats from the new Nas album and did a rap song back to him. You know what I'm saying? She was just so, yeah, it was like a response. So it was just, Nas is really touching hearts, man. He's touching hearts and souls out here in a whole different way. You know what I mean? Just shouting out the people. You know what I mean? Shouting out the people individually, shouting out their names and all of that, man. You know? And you know, he's got a lot of good stuff on here, man. The first cut on there, Get Ready, is a banger. He's got a joint on there called Pause Tapes that just breaks down back in the days, you know, when you were young and you were trying to catch stuff on your cassette tape on the radio. You know what I mean? Yeah, you know what I mean? Like he talks about a lot of that real stuff that we grew up on, man, you know, in hip hop. And that's what made this album really strong, man. Like I said, Nas really brought it lyrically on this album. And just context wise, as far as the subjects, man, you know, he really brought it to raw hip hop again. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? And you know, for him and Primo to do this together, you know, Primo is straight boom bap. You know what I mean? And you know, I understand what some of the people are saying about Primo's beats. There's a couple of beats on there, you know, could have been stronger, but I don't think it kills the album at all. It doesn't kill the album at all. This album is crazy, man. It's fire, and it's what we've been waiting on for a long time. And I would love to hear more coming from Nas and from Primo. You know, this was actually the last installment of the Legacy Has It series. You know, it was Nas, it was De La, it was Big L, Raekwon, Ghostface, Slick Rick, and somebody else. But you know, this was the one to close it all out for the year. And yeah, it's making mad noise, man. Big salute to Nas, man.
Yeah,
And
like
Primo.
and here's a different way to maybe think about like DJ Premier and the beats. Part of me thought that, oh, cool, this is an album both in the lyrics and in the beats that have aged well, as in they're not in the same stage of their life. They're making music for like for us, for people
Yeah,
who got gray hair, right? Like
that's
so,
right.
like
That's right.
I think like part of me thinks that I love the beats. I love all of them, right? Like I love the album from beginning to end. But it's also one where
Right.
like I'm on a treadmill, right? I'm on a
Yeah.
treadmill listening to
Yeah.
Nas, right? Trying to make sure my cardio's good. So I think that the album
Man.
itself, maybe a lot of people who are younger would like, nah, or people who just nostalgia, like it needs to feel the way it felt when we were in our 20s. I think it's just made to feel the way we feel now, right?
Yeah,
Which is
man.
different than the
It's
way
for
we felt
us.
in our
It's
20s.
That's right. It's for hip hop 50s, man. It's for the people in their 50s of hip hop, man. You know what I mean? We're all grown and yeah, we got our grades and we out here still doing it, still trying to survive and make things happen. You know what I
And that
mean?
makes
And we
too.
need a soundtrack for that. I can't do I can't do it and be what's his name? Young Boy. I can't do Young Boy. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? And as the soundtrack of my life right now. You know what I'm saying? I'm
Right.
living something totally different from what he's talking about. You know what I mean? So we needed a Nas, we needed a De La, we needed our elders, man, in hip hop to represent. You know what I'm saying?
It's
And
kind of
showing
like
people.
it's kind of like the demographics of the show. Like we are like a hip hop political talk show, but we are all hip hop political talk show, right? We
Right,
we we're the people who grew up on hip hop and understood politics, and
right,
so it's an aging thing. But I love this whole like legacy. Everybody's making stuff because it really is like it fits the people who grew up in the '90s and who are still here, right?
right,
We
right.
were one way when we were in the '90s. Not all of us made it here. One, we got
Exactly.
taken out. In our
Hey,
younger ages, we got taken out by violence. In our older ages, we got taken out by health. We
Yeah,
still here, and they still
yeah.
here, and they making
And
music we can
and
listen
we still
to.
need to relate, and we still need to relate
Right.
to people, to something. You know what I mean? We still need that. You know what I
let me
mean?
say this.
I had made a post. I just want to read it real quick to y'all. I had made a post the other day. Speaking on the elders in hip hop, man, and and how a lot of our elders in hip hop have returned and put out music, man, and it's a beautiful
Mhm.
thing. This is what we need. You know what I'm saying? They've been talking about how, there was a young rapper named Simba. I don't know if y'all know about Simba, but Simba was saying that he needs to hear the older generation in hip hop so that he can use that as a guide
Yeah,
to what hip hop is going to look like
yeah,
when I
that's
get there.
grounded.
You know what I'm saying?
Uh,
That's
He
grounded.
needs that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what I posted was this. I said this. I said, so in the last 5 years, we've gotten new music from Black Moon, Diamond D, Cypress Hill, AZ, Nas, MC Light, KRS-One, Artifacts, Wu-Tang Clan, Redman, LL Cool J, Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre, De La Soul, Busta Rhymes, Public Enemy, Rakim, Moni Love, Andre 3000, Black Star, Common, Pete Rock, Craig G, Ghostface Killer, Raekwon, Hakeem Green, our own Hakeem Green, big ups, a salute
right.
to Hakeem,
Bring up.
Kid Capri, Cool G Rap, Mobb Deep, Smith and Wesson, Slick Rick, The Locks, and Pharoah Monch. I said, this is hip hop in its 50s, show and prove,
Mm, mm.
you know?
Wow.
And
It is.
that's like a whole era of hip hop that came back just within the last 5 years.
But
You
Right.
know what I
Except for
mean?
with Common.
but
Except for
the,
I would say with Common never goes away. Like Common's literally been making an album every year since the '90s.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
Common's
you
been
can't
here.
you can't really go 2 years without a Common album, and his albums be good. Like
Yeah,
Common's been making really good music, and his music has been getting better, right? Like the last thing that he released with Pete Rock was like nice,
that was
but he's been
really good.
doing stuff like. But did you check out the
That whole
beautiful
album was
struggle
so
for
good,
like
man.
right? That whole album's good, right? But check out the beautiful struggle,
Yeah.
right? Like that he did a couple of years back,
yeah.
and he's been just
Mhm.
been innovating constantly. So big shout out to Common, who never went away.
Yeah,
You can never say
yeah, yeah.
Common went away.
Nah. Also, to add to that list, also Ice Cube, Exhibit, and Eric Sermon released new music recently. Also, so I mean, folks are out here, man. We just got to tap into our generation of hip hop and see what they're talking about. You know what I'm saying? Because those are our peers. You know what I mean? Like I said, you know, it's cool to listen to the young stuff. You know, every once in a while you might hear something that you can dig, but that's not where we are. You know what I mean? So we need us.
And it's funny because people were talking about how hip hop's not on the top of the Billboard charts anymore. But for us, the best hip hop in years has come out. A
Right.
lot of us weren't really getting into the hip hop that was on the top of the Billboard charts years back, right? We weren't really getting
Right.
like, you know, I know a lot of people like Future, but it just never was. I mean, I ain't knocking them, but it just wasn't. I ain't listen. I like music where I can listen to the lyrics and be like, oh, that lyric was deep. That's not Future,
Right.
right? It's got beats, but you ain't gonna be like, damn, that's a great Future lyric. No, I mean, no one ever says that, right? No one ever like, oh, that lyric, right? But that's, you know, now it's music that even though it's not at the top of the charts, it is at the top for us. We all know
And
about it. We talking about it. It's hip hop.
think about some of those artists that I just mentioned. You know, back in the days, when, you know, hip hop was just starting to slip into the Grammys a little bit. You know, a lot of those artists weren't on the charts then. You know what I mean? They weren't
Yep,
getting
that's
Grammys and
true.
stuff then. You know what I mean? But we still loved them, and
They
they
weren't
had
million dollar selling artists, right?
right. You know, they still had a cult following, man. Like we all love Public Enemy, we all love, you know, Juice Crew and all of these folks, man. You know, and just to hear these folks, you know, today, it's bananas, man. Another one I got to shout out is just Roxanne Shante. She hasn't put out any new music, man, but she is so active and still can freestyle off the head fresh and clean, man. Like I just got to shout out all of the old heads, all the OGs in hip hop, man. I love y'all and keep doing it, man. Keep showing and proving, because we got to show and prove to the younger generation how it's done. You know?
I think that's right and exact, man. And because I would beg to differ with you when you say that, it's cool based on some of those youngins' music. I think that, one of the things the mayor talked about tonight when he said that after those young folks had committed that murder and killed 3 people, they went back in the studio to make a rap record, right? Based around this whole drill music that, most of these, young kids are listening to. Remember, when we were coming through, what they considered hard music was gangster music coming out of California, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now these kids are listening to something else that, they go out and actually commit a crime and then go back in the studio like they didn't commit a crime.
Mm-hmm.
So it is, it's more than just having, these brothers and sisters coming back and making music to show them how to make music. I think they're coming back and showing, what the music is supposed to be, right? It's not
Right.
supposed to
Exactly.
be about this,
Yeah, it's not supposed to be corrupt. You know what I mean?
Right. And
It's
it's
supposed
not
to be
about,
corrupt. Music was always supposed to be uplifting, was always supposed to just, it was supposed to broaden your imagination, you know what I mean? Broaden your mind, open up some ideas, you know what I mean? That's what music always was to me. So, and that's what it should be.
right. And it just so happened that out of that they were able to create careers, right? They were doing what they loved to do, and they were putting beats to it and rhymes to it, and just so happened they were able to make a living from it, right? And today some of those songs still live in infamy,
Yeah.
right? Think about it. Some of those
Yep.
some of those records that they were making now, you listen to it, I mean, it take you all the way back. It's a period piece for you.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
music that these kids are making today, I mean, and listen, I don't want to discourage anybody, but I'm going to tell some of these young kids, look, that stuff you making today is absolutely pure garbage. It's violent music, right? And that's
Well,
not doing anything to help you.
and I've got to also like we've got to get some more of the young artists on the show, because I do think it's mixed too. There are a lot of really good young artists who are out there. Big shout out to
Okay.
Goke, to Unicorn 151, to a
Yeah.
lot of young people who are doing just different stuff, right? So I don't want to like drill is a part of it, and it's a problem. But I think that there are a lot of young people who are thinking the same thing we're thinking, in terms
Yeah,
of that don't define us. That's not us, right? So I think that
right.
there's a mix in all of it, and I think we need to get some of these young artists back on too, that are doing a lot to try to shape youth culture in different ways. I think that's I know that we started really off talking about like, yo, how could you kill 3 people and go into the studio? That's just that's the craziest thing
Yeah.
to me, right? And I think we are probably going to come back to that a lot, just in
Hmm.
terms of just how
The visual of that, Jonathan. Just
right,
just just think about it. I mean, and it had to impact the mayor for him to even tell us that, right?
right.
That what they because remember nobody knew that. That was inside information from the
I
police.
didn't know that, right?
How
Like
did
I
they
actually didn't
how
know
did
that,
they
right? Like
even
I came in a little late, so he talked about it but I didn't know he was talking about that. I didn't know that they had literally like they know that they part of the way in which they were caught, and what they knew is that yo they made a record about it with me.
Yeah,
Wow,
that's great. And that's the
wow.
whole drill thing, man. You know, they do the crime and then they go record songs about it.
But I don't even know like I know we have to wait. We have to wait until because everything else is speculation. We got to wait till more information actually comes out. And I know that this is
Mhm.
going to be some of the most interesting things that come out because it does not seem like this was something where they were shooting at each other and innocent people got caught in the crossfire. It didn't seem like it was a drive-by and innocent people got caught in the crossfire. This seems like they just started shooting innocent people and went and made a record about it. I don't, like we're gonna have to wait and hear what comes out. But if that's what it is,
All that putting
right?
in work.
Right, if that's what it is, that's that's crazy, right? Killing a 21-year-old
Yeah.
woman, a child coming home from football practice, and a 19-year-old that were just walking. Like,
it's my
is-
John.
like
Yeah.
that's not even code. That's not even like when people. I don't want to nostalgia do nostalgia for deaths in our city, but like when we were growing up, like people would get killed in drive-bys, but they weren't the target. They were innocent people who were killed because they were trying to target someone else, which is horrible. It's violent. It's terrible. It was disruptive to the community, but it didn't. It was bad, but it wasn't as like this seems even more random. Like even more like you weren't in danger. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about like you stole somebody's stuff. It wasn't about you needed like it wasn't
Let's
revenge. It
get a
wasn't
rap.
right. Like so, and we're back in this. Yo, that's one of the craziest things I've heard, and it's one of those things where it's like we really have to have a lot of different conversations about what this is, who slipped through what cracks, and
But
what we need to do
that is
about those who
why
slipped through those cracks.
but that is why, Jonathan, you gotta, if you came in and you heard the mayor say that we are desensitized, right? Think about that, right? To that something that horrific, right? You know that we are now desensitized to something like that. I know I'm not. I mean,
Right. And
I'm
most of our community was outraged,
yeah.
right? But the fact that there are some people within our communities that were desensitized to it to the point where they have access to a studio, go into a studio, make music after murdering 3 innocent people. Damn. Yeah. I know that I want to try to end on a positive note, and we just went back to this. But let's, thank you, Rhino, for coming in for that incredible uh, new music that is coming out, right? Uh,
Yeah,
thank
man.
you, right? Um,
Well, on
yeah,
that
true.
note, let me
And
just say
to Taretha Jones, right? Like, yes, right? Like, for many places, it's been like that in many different places, right? Like in terms of
Mr. Jones is
just
from
randomized
Mississippi, too, by
violence,
the way.
and people didn't always pay attention. So yes, that is something that is also true, right? That is something
Here's
that
the
is
thing
also
that I
true.
want us
Thank you for
also.
that.
I don't want us to lose sight of this too, and it's the thing that makes this work so edgy, so difficult, and so frustrating, yet at the same time fulfilling. Right? For horrible as those two events were, right? The fact is, all the work that we're doing, we still have the numbers going the right way.
Fair.
Right?
Yep.
Does that make that neighborhood feel better? Probably
No,
not.
not at all. Not
Right?
at all. Right.
That trauma that was just created has to be addressed and tended to on its own terms. And when those things happen, the trauma is always messier than the immediate victims.
Right.
Right?
Much messier.
You always need to appreciate that. But we are in a place. We're in a place because we have matured politically and culturally that we're actually taking those tendencies and pushing them the way they're supposed to go, and as opposed to that no longer being our norm.
And that it's essential for that to be in the narrative.
That was our norm.
And that's essential for that to be in the narrative too, right? Like Absolutely. At some points, I remember we're having conversations with Deputy Mayor Kishiyuri and talking about how the numbers had gotten so low to a point where the new focus, instead of like gang violence and retaliation, it was on domestic violence, right? The highest numbers were in domestic violence, and we needed to have different strategies on dealing with domestic violence because those were where the majority of murders were going on. Like,
and that's still
we can't actually, we have to add stuff that's going on here. We have to have multiple conversations at the same time because we have multiple policies that deal with multiple things at the same time. But we have to at all times acknowledge that a lot of people have been doing a lot of work on the ground to make things better. The Newark Anti-Violence Coalition, the Office of Violence Prevention, the things that have been going on in public schools to get like Newark to be called officially a high-performing district. And I keep repeating it because no one keeps hearing it. They were like, when I first said that, people were like, nah, man, I was like, no, the State Department of Education. Well, they said we were failing, you believe it. But when the same State Department of Education says it's a high-performing district based on attendance, based on test scores that have improved, based on those things, in all these different schools, right? Like
that
West Side
was one of the
graduating
main narratives, Jonathan, that they used during the gubernatorial campaign to go against Raz.
Yeah, but
right, exactly.
The narrative did.
But it's not.
We're getting it done. The facts said we're improving, but the narrative was different.
Right.
Yeah. And Zaid, you on point, because it doesn't matter, Jonathan, how high performing we are. If 3 people are murdered, right? And people are desensitized and they act like it didn't happen, that's a problem, right?
And
so
I think it does matter.
So people can't hear when you say Newark is a high perform, the schools are high performing. They can't hear that, Jonathan.
Well, I think 2 things. I think some people can't hear it, but I think a lot more people who benefit from you not hearing it,
right,
or don't want you to hear it, right? Like Chalkbeat, when it came out, Chalkbeat didn't even cover the story. Anything wrong in the district, Chalkbeat covers. Newark being a high-performing district, won't even cover for weeks. And when they did cover it, it was buried in the 3rd paragraph of the leak. They were like, "Oh, and some despite it having this, and this, then it's high-performing." They buried that stuff, right? And other news organizations didn't even cover it, right? So I think that we can't be doing their job for them. I think we got to repeat it over and over again. Because we got to normalize, just like we normalize certain just like violence has been normalized and some people have been desensitized to it. I think we got to normalize saying positive things about the work that we're doing. Saying positive things about the things that we are seeing. We got to do it. We can't stop saying it.
No, you're right.
That doesn't mean we don't focus on other stuff, but we got to just acknowledge it.
I think you're absolutely right, and I think Ms. Jones is correct too, because it speaks to what Rukia was just saying, right? She was saying, that because they are Black, her brother and her family can't run Jackson. They can't turn it around because they are Black. And what Ms. Jones says right now is correct as well.
She's from Mississippi too, by the way.
Yeah.
Right.
Ms. Jones is from Mississippi. She lives in
Okay.
Jersey, but she's from Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So-
and I agreed.
So I think all of that's right and exact, Jonathan. We need to say, what's good, in our city, but we also need to tell the truth and shame the devil, because that mother, right? Think that mother who lost her daughter, Jonathan, had to leave Newark. She just couldn't stay here no more. She
Right.
left the
Exactly.
city,
Stuff.
Exactly.
Stuff.
Right.
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 And and you got to think that the other mother who lost her child, right? She's still here, but she also has another son in the same age that has to go to school every day without his brother.
Right.
Think
And
about
that's
that.
and has to heal from the wounds that he has.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right. Like both psychological, physical, right? Like all of that. And unless we actually make sure that we address the trauma that is there, and the trauma of the kids who lost somebody, right? The trauma of the kids who are scared to walk home, the trauma of the kids
That's right.
and the adults who are scared to walk down the street based on
That's
what that happens. And I think the conversation and I do think Newark is getting better at having this conversation of the effects of violence and the shame, right? Nobody's glorifying this.
That's right.
Nobody's glorifying these kids.
Right.
Nobody's glorifying these adults. They are seen as what they did. They traumatized the community. It is a shameful behavior. And I think that we need to normalize that behavior being unacceptable,
That's right.
shameful,
It has to be isolated.
does not belong in the community,
It has to be isolated.
needs to be isolated, right?
Yep.
I think all that. And I think, and salute to the Anti-Violence Coalition, to Bashir, to people who've been in the streets, to people who are just pushing the narrative that this is not normal. You don't do this, right? Like, killing life is valuable and sacred, especially our life. Our life matters to us. So yeah, and we've gone past time. We've gone 24 minutes past time. And Donna wasn't even here. It's my fault. I can't even blame Ed. I can't blame Ed. I can't blame Donna because I was complicit.
You got wild.
Maybe I could blame DJ Rhino because he got on talking. He got on here late and he was talking about Nas and Premier. So we can't end when Nas and Premier are on, right? So yeah, so maybe I can blame DJ Rhino a little bit. I'm kidding, man, but
it looked like my screen froze a little bit.
Yeah, you did freeze.
Right. Your screen did freeze, but we hear you. But we're signing off now anyway, so it's all good. So thank our guest, thank the mayor for coming on at 6 for the mayor's forum, and shout out to the men's meeting that I always think is some of the most important work that goes on in the country. I think is underestimated, directly addressing the needs of men and directly communing and directly dealing with giving opportunities and thinking about opportunities for economic opportunities with men in our communities. I think that has been underestimated and undervalued. And I think that Newark shows that is an important piece that cannot be missed. So shout out to Mayor, shout out to the men's meeting, shout out to Rukia Lumumba. Thank you again for coming on. And joining us again. We always value having you here. We support you. We support your brother. We support your family through this process, through this crisis, and we support the work that you do and are continuing to do. Thank you for continuing to write and the piece that you co-wrote in The Nation. We appreciate you. We love you, and we look forward to having you on our show again more regularly because we need to know constantly. We need to always know what is going on in Mississippi. So thank you. Any other shout outs? Zaid, Ed, stuff that's going on?
On the way out, several things. One, tomorrow, one of the cubs of the December 12th movement, the great Erica Ford, is going to be spotlighted at the Temple of Hip Hop for her work, her groundbreaking work in community-based violence intervention. She's one of the pioneers, and I'm very proud of Erica. She's going to be at the Temple of Hip Hop at 3 o'clock. I want to shout her out. This time next week, we will be in the first day of Kwanzaa, right? So for the Kwanzaa season, there are 2 Kwanzaas coming up I want to lift up. African Echoes is doing a Kwanzaa on Saturday the 27th at the Gant Gilbert building. They want me to do a spotlight talk on Malcolm Centennial. The following day at the Refal building, right, the People's Organization for Progress and Refal will do their annual Kwanzaa, what will be Ujamaa, right? At both are at 3 p.m. So next week, this time we will be in Kwanzaa season, y'all, right?
Okay.
Do not waste your resources with somebody else. Kwanzaa is an in-gathering time for us to come together and to take care of our own needs with our own resources and within our own spaces.
Okay.
I've got one thing. Well, I've got two things. One is obviously want to thank all of the guests for coming on tonight and echo what Jonathan said. So I won't belabor that. But I also want to make sure we say congratulations to our very own brother Zaid on the award he got last week from D12. Congratulations,
Absolutely.
brother. Well
Congratulations, man.
well
And,
deserved.
and Erica is one of those babies that came from D12, right? I'm so proud of them, and I was very humble for them to even think of me in that conversation with my big sister PanAfrica. We've been through a lot of wars together over a lot of years, and I really appreciate that consideration from them, and I appreciate y'all lifting that up.
Yep. All right.
All right. Thank you. And again, subscribe to All Politics Are Local on YouTube. Go to YouTube and subscribe to All Politics Are Local with the R, and check us out. Share our stuff, and we'll see you next week. Peace. Be safe and peace.